5:01. This is our work session, and we only have half an hour. So if we need to call Jessie, I will. I have her cell phone number. But if we don't need to, then we won't bother her. And Daisha, you had indicated a strong preference for number C375. So let's go ahead and pull that one up. And if you'd like to share with us your suggestions and why.
Yes. So the revision that I recommended was currently our policy, which is in 5610, says that the school board voted not to hear any expulsion appeals. And I would like to propose that we do the opposite. And so if we were to approve it, we would actually allow our community to appeal to the board. And so that was what my revision, I actually got the exact wording from CCHA, I think it was Wayne County. They approve to vote on and hear appeals. And so I actually just copied and pasted that wording is where I got that from.
And Rach, could you, if you remember, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but could you give the background on why we referred suspension and expulsion appeals to the county court rather than hearing them ourselves? Is there any history there that we should know before we go on?
I don't think there's any history. I don't think this is something that comes up often. I think it was, I will speculate and say that it felt like this would open less liability to the school corporation and ultimately get a better outcome for the family and the student. Just kind of understanding our own limitations as a board. And I think that there have been enough issues with struggles in maintaining confidentiality in the past that I would have some hesitancy to do that given the risk for exposure on this situation, but in that particular situation. But I mean, I'm open to other opinions about it, but right now that would be where my inclination is.
Okay. Lawrence, do you have anything, any opinion, either direction on this issue?
Yeah, I have a question. Why, say, maybe Daisha can answer, or whatever. So the board, school trustee have to vote to hear appeals. So maybe we can just say we can hear appeals. So this vote, I mean, that means we have to vote to decide whether or not we hear the appeal or what. So I just trying to understand why we have to vote here.
Right. What it says right now is that we've voted to not hear those and to then refer them to the circuit court instead, because there are two legal options. The school board can hear suspension and expulsion appeals first, and then if someone wants to further appeal, they can then move forward with
The county court.
the court. Or we can say, we don't want to have anything to do with student discipline and instead skip over the school board and refer people directly to the court. So historically, the board has chosen to adopt a policy to vote that we don't hear suspension and expulsion appeals.
Clarify, try and understand, make sure I understand what you say. So basically, before, when we have these issues, we have, the board have to vote first to decide whether or not we hear that, or we.
No,
So we
just
vote.
blanket,
Yeah.
we do not hear any.
We have that things in the history, right?
I'm sorry?
We have that things, we did that in the history with school board, say, well, somebody, every year or whoever, whatever frequency, we vote, say, we don't hear any appeal.
No, it would be in adopting the policy. We voted not to. And it wouldn't be on a case-by-case basis. It would be all or nothing. We either hear all of them or we don't hear any of them.
Okay, so but now the new part proposed, the Daisha proposed the clause basically saying we have vote to hear appeal.
Correct.
So this vote is for what? we vote to decide to hear, or,
Right now, we're discussing whether or not we're going to change the current policy. Our current policy says we do not hear those appeals. Instead, we refer them to the county court system. And the county court system makes a determination whether or not due process has been followed for that particular case. And what Daisha is saying is that she would like to change the policy that's currently in force, which is reflected in the policy that CCHA has presented to us. Our current policy also says that we don't hear them. And so when CCHA wrote this policy, they carried that forward. But Daisha has found examples of other CCHA clients who hear the appeals at the school board level, and she would rather have that. Does that make sense?
yeah, I totally understand that. My question is why we have vote here, why we don't just say we will hear any appeals for these things?
Because we have to vote to adopt the policy. That's the
This
vote.
policy, you mean talk about this policy?
Yeah, if we adopt this policy, that is the vote that's being referred to. We have voted by adopting this policy to not hear them. So the
Yeah.
question really is, would you prefer to hear appeals at the school board level, or would you prefer not to know that kind of personal information about your neighbors and their children and refer it out to the court?
Yeah, before I said my comments, I just try to clarify
Sure.
what is happening. So basically, my opinion is we want to hear any appeals. I mean, there are several reasons, rationales. The first thing is, I mean, when you say, especially suspension is okay. When you say expulsion, basically that's the only superintendent can make that decisions, and we are teams. We can hear that and make sure everything happen. Goes through everything makes sense, and that's one reason we want to solve these issues within our school corporation before go to outside the things. And once you go outside, I mean, our school's reputation is kind of a news report, that kind of things, and it's also expensive. We have to hire some, I mean, lawyers, attorneys to handle these kind of things.
Okay, pause. I hear a couple good questions there. Could one of you describe the current process for how a suspension or expulsion is carried out typically? Like,
The student is given due process when there's going to be a suspension or expulsion, and you work through that process. And if a parent challenges whether or not due process was followed, or the decision was followed in a way that it should have been followed, then you can appeal. And we have a hearing officer that we assign, and they go through the appeal process.
okay. And the appeal process would go currently straight to the court.
No,
No,
that would
that's
start with
inside.
an administrator that's been assigned as the hearing officer. That's
Okay.
not related to the situation.
Uh-huh.
And they hear the sides, and then they make a decision. And from there, because the board at this time does not hear appeals, it would go to the county court for that.
Right. Is there a
Instead of-
cost associated with that action, or does the county court, we have CCHA on a retainer, so presumably that would be part of their services, right? But is there like court fees? And then, I'm sorry, putting you on the spot.
That's putting me on the spot. I'm not
I
sure.
don't
That
know
might be
either.
that might be a Jesse question,
Okay,
because I know they've got corporations, that districts that do not.
okay. I will
But the
start
board
with
does.
some
Yeah.
questions. Are there costs with going to court on expulsion challenge? Okay, so I will find out. This is only the first reading of this one, so we have time to find out. We're not voting on anything tonight.
The thing I would suggest, though, is that if our hearing officer has not found that that due process wasn't followed, and they were to go to the board, I believe the board would find the same finding, And so they're going to go to the county court anyway.
Okay. Right, gotcha. Does that make sense? Okay, Rachel, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, that was really the nature of my question to Dr. Reiner, is what is typical in this? To me, a stop at the board is potential for exposure and delaying a process that unnecessarily.
Yeah, that's
When you're
my
talking about
concern.
a student who is trying to figure out where they're going to be and is clearly in a point where there's been problems, I just worry about us being an unnecessary layer, and unnecessary layers are also exposure layers.
Yeah, we have 12 meetings a year, 11 meetings a year that are scheduled, and if something were to happen tomorrow and we had to wait until our next scheduled meeting, although I think it would be an executive session type of thing, but even then we have to give notice and we have to find a time when we can all meet, and I feel like it would just unnecessarily delay the process.
I was also going to ask Dr. Reiner how common appeals are. I've not heard of very many ever, actually, so I'm just curious.
Did we have a couple last year or one? Were they done with the hearing officer?
The hearing officer, yes.
It didn't go to the next step, which would either
Oh, you're
be
talking about the county court.
court or
I
us.
haven't had. We've gone to the hearing officer and stopped it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're to some degree negotiating a moot point. Okay.
Yes, Stacia.
2 points. So I've been on the board for a year and a half, and on my time on the board was told that there were parents, families that wanted to reach out to the board and were told they were not allowed to. And
For this
so-
specific
For
issue,
this specific suspension or expulsion.
can you forward those communications?
They came from Rachel, and I'm happy to forward them. So for me, what delaying the process, what I have heard has not been the parents are frustrated that the process is slow, that they would like to have that ladder that we typically follow, is when they get to administration, if they are feeling like I would like to have the next level, that then they go to the school board. If they're not happy with that level, hearing like from representatives of the community, then they go to the next one. And at least in my experience, and like I said, from the emails, actually there's been twice that it's been emailed that has said that parents would like to reach out to the board, but we're told that they're not allowed to. And so I have to say, I disagree that this is going to be a slowing down of the process for parents. And then the second one, the exposure and confidentiality, to me, that's a topic of training. If there's a concern that board members are sharing confidential information, then my belief is we should be training board members on what's appropriate to share and not share, and have a consistent approach, where I've witnessed kind of double standards. Some board members can share information one way, others cannot. And so to me, that's not a reason not to allow our community to appeal to the school board.
Yes, Rachel.
Could I point out to you that Mrs. Mumford was invited by me for training as a board member multiple times over multiple occasions as she joined the board and refused. So I don't know that we can guarantee that training will necessarily get us through that. That's where policy just sets those groundwork. I'm not opposed to opening this up to an appeal process, but I just would like to hear a good reason to do it, and I just haven't heard a good reason yet to do it, but I'm remaining open to that change on this policy.
Okay. Yui, do you have any thoughts?
Actually, I would like to know the common practice for this issue.
We did
And
look at several other school districts that are comparable: Carmel, Hamilton South,
So-
Southmont.
so
None of them
none of
did. We
them-
only found one
only one school board
that,
deal with
that
this
hears
appeal.
them. And that was LSC. TSC, Hamilton South, Southmont, Northmont, Carmel, and I looked at, no, I didn't look at Zionsville. I was going to. They do allow it? Okay. Okay. So it's a variety.
Okay, so, but either way, I feel the wording of this statement is kind of awkward, because, for any other policy, we vote, but other ones didn't say the board voted to do this or not to do this. I don't think it's necessary
I think
to
the
include
reason-
that.
The
And,
reason may be because it is something that both practices are legal and acceptable. And so they're saying the board has chosen to or chosen not to by vote, rather than just saying it's been handed down from council, or rather than saying the superintendent decided, they're saying the board has decided to or not to. I think that's a semantic issue, but I would guess that that's why.
Okay.
I think it's legislation that has said you have to have this in your policy that you have voted to hear it or you have voted to not hear it. And that's why it's a little bit more confusing typically than other policies, but that's why.
That's my understanding.
And then, so.
Next question I'm wondering will be for those who choose to hearing to hear the appeal, how do they handle it? Because you mentioned a practical concern regarding the timing, right? So the board may not be able to deal with this issue timely. Then how did the other like events will deal with it? I wonder.
I don't know.
Yeah. So since this is a first read, I feel it may be helpful to do more research
I
regarding
can
how they
check
handle
with
it.
Jesse on that as well. This is.
Another thing I'm not sure is, so if they are referred to the county court, so what's the implication for those people, for the families? So do they have to pay for something or?
Let's find out. Are there costs was the first
Right.
question. And the second one was, what does the appeal process look like when boards hear versus when county courts
Yeah,
hear?
because if it's very expensive for them to go to the county court, I feel that might be a, barrier for them if the family is already financially disadvantaged. And then it might be easier for them to talk to the board and for the board to hear different, to get different information and make a judgment. And so, yeah, I just feel this issue need more research to help us make a well-informed decision. So at this point, I'm not sure.
Okay, Rachel?
That's a good point that you always made about the cost, and I would question, Jesse, if the board's decision would be binding in that situation. So in other words, if we accepted the appeal, and then the family did not agree with the decision, they would still be in a position to need to go to the court. Because this isn't, what we're talking about is not a resolution of the problem. What we're looking at is if they have successfully executed a due process. So it's not like, we're not telling them, oh, you need to take this child back and they need to be allowed this and this accommodation. That's outside of the scope of our authority. So I would be just interested in knowing what value the decision of the board would be in the first place.
Okay.
I think that's a legal counsel question.
Yep, if board hears appeal, is our decision binding, or could they further appeal to the court? They being the family. Got it. Yui, did you have anything else? Lawrence, I'm going to ask Brad if he has any, and then I'll come back around. That way
Go
everybody
ahead.
gets an equal amount of time to speak.
Well, I worry about, we don't have legal expertise, that's what we hire attorneys to do, nor are we a jury. Anyone that can respond to questions that we might have is not testifying under oath, therefore it's not legally binding. So we're putting ourselves in a position where we're being asked to consider an appeal. We really don't have any legal power to act, nor do we really understand the ground rules or what we can or can't do. So I think by inserting ourselves in this, we're asking for trouble. So I think the best path, in my opinion, based on what I've heard, because I've been on school board for 16 years, Station, I haven't gotten any concern or complaint from an expelled student. I haven't heard that. I know of kids that have had that happen to them, but I haven't heard it. The other thing is, we're not the educational experts. We don't have the full framework of what actually occurred. We're not going to have the full framework of what actually occurred. In my opinion, let the experts handle their jobs.
Thanks. Another concern I have that I don't think has been raised yet is the conflict of interest, because if we, as the board, find that our employees did not follow due process, the next logical step for the family would be to sue. And so we're being asked to decide between something that is very much not in our best interests as a body versus something that is very much in our best interests as a body. So our objectivity in that situation is easily open to challenge. So that was my only unique thought. Daisha, let's go around one more time and then we're going to be out of time.
I do think it'd be helpful to hear from legal counsel. I know, a teacher, if they have an issue with the way that their termination or things take place, they're allowed to appeal to the board. And so I would like to understand why this viewpoint of, parents aren't allowed to, but teachers are allowed. To me, this all seems similar, that it's just another step where they can have their voice be heard. So I would like to hear more from legal counsel why this is different.
Okay.
And like Brad said, I am not surprised parents haven't complained about it because they've been told they're not allowed to share with the school board about this. And so, but like I said, I've only heard it twice since I've been on the board, but that's only in a year and a half. Parents were told they can't talk to the board about it.
Are you sure you're not conflating a little bit that we don't hear from parents about specific situations with their specific children during public comment?
No.
Okay,
I mean,
just
can find
checking.
it was when Rachel was president. It was that she shared there was 2 situations. If the parents reach out to us, we're not allowed to communicate with them. And so I can forward that email to you.
Well, so to be clear, we should not, as board members, be communicating with parents about disciplinary or academic issues with their children while they are still working with administrators and teachers to do so. That is not appropriate for us to do that. So once something has been resolved, that ultimately would escalate to the decision of the superintendent to make that decision. But I don't, and I will stand behind that. I don't think it's appropriate for any individual board member to be telling a parent or advising a parent on or intervening in a disciplinary or academic issue with a parent. That's not our role. It's not the role of the board member.
Right. That's not what we're talking about. To appeal and communicate with the parents. With the school board is what was communicated to us.
Right, as of right now, that's in policy, they're not.
Right. And that's what, I'm not talking about school board intervening in the other topics. That I don't think is appropriate either.
Okay.
So you are making the case here tonight that is board chair, I stated the corporation policy and you found that to be disagreeable.
No, I'm sharing that I think we should change our policy, and I shared that we've had examples from it in the past as well that I've shared.
Okay.
Okay. Lawrence, you said you had something else
Yeah,
to
I'm
say.
just trying to finish my comments. I didn't finish that yet. So-
Okay, well, I'm just trying to give everybody an equal opportunity to
Yeah, that's
speak,
fine.
so.
Yeah, the first things I want to say is we want to try to avoid these issues escalated to outside court, everything, so we can handle this issue within our school corporations for our reputations and also cost. Another reasons I think, suspension, especially expulsion for student is quite a serious decision. Basically, we are education institute. We provide education to kids, and now expulsion, basically, we're saying we refuse to provide any education to the kids. I understand there are some situations we have to do that, but I think we need extra layers of checks to make sure we make this decision in the best interest of student and also our schools. So that's all. Thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, Dr. Reiner, there are a limited number of things that a child could be expelled for in an Indiana school. Do you happen to have, things like taking firearms to school? It's a somewhat short list, isn't it?
There's some ground.
And guided by
Somewhat, but it
state
could
law?
be repeated simpler things too. So.
So repeated smaller offenses could lead to expulsion as well.
Yui? Okay, Brad?
Okay.
Okay. Did we have anybody signed up for public comment? Just a second, please. Did we have anybody signed up for public comment? No? Okay, cool. Go ahead, Lawrence.
So when you say, I understand there are some hearings, so the person for hearing is inside the people's or from outside?
First, it's inside people. First, it's a, what'd you call him? A
Hearing officer.
hearing officer.
The hearing
It's an
officer is
administrator that's
unrelated,
not
but,
involved.
Outside of the school, that school, but inside our school corporation.
So if it happened at Willis, it might be
Somebody else.
Sarah.
Unrelated. Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Is there a fixed position or it varies every time
It varies. It would vary depending on which school.
appointed for different cases?
Yes. It would be an administrator from a different school, probably.
Or Mrs. Roth. So that it's, because they take it very seriously and they study and work hard at it, we wouldn't want to overburden just one person to do that. Not that it happens all the time, but in case you had a couple come up, there's more than one person trained to serve as the hearing officer.
Thanks.
Any,
You're welcome.
go ahead, Rachel. Oh, I thought I heard you. Anything else on this one? Okay, it's 5:27. So we'll go ahead and adjourn our work session and celebrate our retiree, and we have snacks, and then we'll reconvene at 6 for the official meeting. So we're adjourned. I hereby call to order the June 10th meeting of the School Board of Trustees. And this evening, we are honoring our retirees, and we have 75%, so I'd say that's pretty good. And our tradition has been to read a brief biography, and we have volunteers to do that. Lawrence, would you like to start? Yeah, why
My
not?
honor. Oh, my goodness.
You're on the left,
Sure, sure.
my left, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to read Cassie Slaughter's. Please pardon my broken English in case I didn't pronounce correctly. Okay. So Cassie Slaughter, Secretary of West Lafayette Elementary and West Lafayette Junior Senior High School from 1995 to 2024. Cassie was born and raised in Highbridge, New Jersey. She graduated from St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana in 1976. She worked at Attica High School as a substitute teacher and athletic department secretary from 1982 to 1995. Cassie started working for West Lafayette Corporation, Community School Corporation at Cumberland Elementary in 1995 as the building and principal's secretary until 2009. From 2009 to the present, Cassie has worked at West Lafayette High School as principal's secretary, attendance clerk, and athletics department secretary. Other extracurricular activities, Cassie kept the scorebooks for West Lafayette boys and girls basketball teams for 25 years. She has kept stats for the West Lafayette football team for 20 years, and the scorebooks for Purdue women's volleyball for 21 years. Her hobbies include quilting and handwork. Favorite moment working for WLCSC. Not a favorite moment, but a most memorable moment working for West Lafayette Community School Corporation is when she was tackled on the sidelines of a West Lafayette football game. Well, what? Oh, sorry. I thought I done something wrong. Okay, while keeping the taste, she fractured both her tibia and fibula, but they healed correctly after surgeries. Thank you, Dr. Bowman. Other details, Cassie went to thank her family's team, Courtney, Kathleen, and Kelly for years of support and patience. It's been a great ride. Thank you.
Okay, and next, Stacia, would you please read Robin's?
Yes, Robin Bennett, she is not here. She was the secretary at West Lafayette Elementary, which actually I was a teacher there when she was the secretary there. So fond memories, and she did a lot for the school. And recently she's been the assistant food service director. There's Courtney, with Courtney. So she's done a lot of great things. She raised all three boys here and attended West Lafayette schools. She worked for 3 years at Purdue Federal Credit Union, and then the last 11 years as the principal secretary at the elementary school, and then food service director assistant since then. She travels a lot, which is why she's not here tonight. She's vacationing in England, Belgium, Netherlands, Norway, and an extended stay in Iceland. She also enjoys spending time with her grandchildren, reading and quilting. She said one of her favorite memories, that there's lots, but one of the best was at the elementary school at Christmas time. She liked to walk past the music room and hear the kids singing carols. She said she looks forward to her retirement, but she would like to take the opportunity to extend her gratitude to West Lafayette and the wonderful people she has worked with.
And then Rachel, would you share about Mrs. Deutsch?
I would. I have Mrs. Deutsch. Denise Deutsch is here tonight. Thank you for being here. Her first job was cleaning students' desks in a Columbia Township school at 17. Her first job in West Lafayette was as a babysitter and then a child care provider at a nursery at a local church. She also worked for Wonderful Weekdays. Her first time at WLCSC was as a Purdue student reading in Mrs. Whitman's classroom in the spring of 1983. She was employed by WLCSC first as a maternity substitute teacher for Mrs. Mugg's class at Happy Hollow Elementary in 1984. She was then employed as a teacher for WLCSC, teaching at 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and kindergarten until her retirement in December of 2023. She also taught after school and summer school with Mrs. Fenn. Other extracurricular activities, Denise was the Red Ribbon Week sponsor for WLES from 1985 to 2023. A lengthy accomplishment there. She was an assistant coach. Yeah. She was an assistant coach for girls youth softball and served on many committees at WLES. She loved learning, reading books, gardening, nature, and sharing with others. Her favorite moments, there are a few with students, but her favorite moment as a teacher was when students' eyes would glisten with glee when the brain connected information and learning, the aha moment. Something Denise learned as a teacher was that acronyms are constantly changing and can be specific to work and sports, etc. And teaching next to a major university like Purdue offers many opportunities to learn about families from all over the world. She would like to share that as a newcomer to West Lafayette schools as a Purdue student, Denise realized it was a very special place. She saw that education was highly valued and wanted to teach here. Denise is very thankful for the opportunity she was given to accomplish that goal. She has taught in West Lafayette, developed friendships in West Lafayette, raised her family in West Lafayette, and sent her children to the West Lafayette schools. She is one of the villagers in the proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," which has helped provide children the opportunity to be a fantastic adults. Thank you, Mrs. Deutsch.
I wanted to go over my thank you and recognize how important the people are in West Lafayette, how important it is that we value education, and that we have always shown that we value teachers. And if there's anything that can be done, that's what I would ask you to do, is to try to help everyone recognize and realize the importance in teaching, the value of the job, and how we pass things on to future generations. It's not some professional sports thing where we get big figure salaries. It's not something where you get recognized or you're written up in the paper or things like that. I left my mark on many, many children, and it was a good mark. The mark of love and care was also recognizing that they are the future. And it's not going to matter what house I lived in, what kind of car I drove, but what makes a difference is that I was important in the life of a child, whether it's as a mom, whether it was as a coach, or whether it was as a teacher. Thank you. I loved being here. It was a very, very important part of my life. Thanks for making it possible.
And last but never least, we have Ron Schreiner.
Ron Schreiner, thank you for being here, Ron. It's good seeing you. Teacher, coach, administrator, friend, advisor, you name it, Ron can do it. West Lafayette Junior Senior High School, 1985. That's the year I got out of Purdue, by the way, to 2024. Ron received his bachelor and master's degrees from Purdue in 1982 and 1989, respectively. He student taught at West Lafayette Junior Senior High School with Mr. Russ Arthur and Mr. Arliss Jeffries. During that year, the junior high shared a building with then Kingston Elementary School, which is Happy Hollow, where we are today. Ron began teaching part-time English at the current junior-senior high school in the fall of 1985 and moved full-time that spring semester. He taught for 16 years, mostly junior high English and social studies, occasionally teaching 9th grade English and U.S. history. He coached the girls' golf team and served as a junior high athletic supervisor for 10 years. Ron was a West Lafayette High School assistant principal for 7 years, 2001 to 2008, then became the junior high principal in 2008 for 1 year, before becoming the West Lafayette Junior Senior High School principal in 2009 until his retirement at the end of this school year. Extracurricular. Ron enjoys spending as much time as possible with his wife and their children. Jake, wife Emily, and their 2 children who live here in West Lafayette. Lindsay, West Lafayette class of 11, who is a high school teacher on the Oregon coast. Claire, West Lafayette 13, a registered nurse in Boise, Idaho. And Reed, West Lafayette class of 15, who is a proposal manager for a marketing business in Chicago. Ron has already started to do much more reading and hopes to resurrect his golf game, travel to visit their kids, and enjoy landscaping and working around the house. Favorite moment with students that Ron could recall: as a starting teacher, he remembers being terrified about teaching 7th and 8th graders, but they became his favorite age group throughout his teaching life. As principal, he is occasionally still terrified about 7th and 8th graders, but really he gets a lot of pleasure from watching everything West Lafayette kids do and how they grow during the 6 years they're in the building up until they walk across that stage. Good stuff. And I got a couple of remarks too. Ron, the most moving graduation speech I've ever heard is the one you made about Thomas Trent. When he graduated, Thomas had plans to become a rafting guide, I believe, and you knew all about it. West Virginia, and you told the entire audience about it, but I thought it was a very moving and great graduation honor that you gave Thomas. My daughter Meredith and Claire were friends in high school. They're only a year apart, so Ron and I spent some time on track fields and comparing notes and so forth. But I asked my daughter Meredith what she remembered about you, and she said all the students loved you, all right? So you've left your mark on all these kids, so much so that Meredith texted me a photograph, and it's a photo of you in a DJ booth with Brad Krause and Michael Duranik. Yes. So, yeah, if only I had the technology. But Ron, you can tell, I mean, you measure someone by the lives they've impacted, and you have done that in spades. So we appreciate everything you've done for us. So thank you. Thank you.
Goodie bag. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so yes, I'll say a few words. I'll also take Mrs. Slaughter's time because she didn't use me. But speaking of Mrs. Slaughter, the Slaughters came here almost 30 years ago. And Kathy, as you heard, had a lot of different jobs. Her first job was supposed to be as Tim's secretary in the athletic department. And thankfully, that didn't happen because it's allowed Kathy a much fuller and happier life, not working with Tim any longer than she has to be with him. So ultimately, Kathy has done so many things, and I know you were the principal secretary, but yeah, but I don't think I utilized you very much because she had too many other things to do. I'd occasionally go up there and ask her to do something. And she, well, I'll get to it, in a few days. So Kathy has done all the different roles. So I just want to acknowledge that, when they came here, Tim was such a huge part of our school system, 2 different occasions. And Kathy was equally as important in so many ways during the workday and also extracurricular. So I very much appreciate both of you as well. And Mrs. Deutsch, I thought I was the oldest person, but I guess I've done some research and I found out that you actually were very gifted and you graduated early. She graduated from college at 18. So she started her teaching career many years before most of us. So she's quite a bit younger than I am, even though she started I know that's the truth. So yes, it's been a great place. It's interesting. I haven't often thought about student teaching, but I started in this building. And I don't think anybody here maybe remembers Mr. Arthur or Mr. Jeffries. Margaret does. And they were amazing characters, and they were co-teachers of, they didn't co-teach, but they taught in the open concept classroom without the wall. And I was terrified a lot in my job, but that was a tough one because these two guys were outsized personalities, and one was on one end, one was the other, and there was like a little bulletin board in between, and I was supposed to get in there and teach. And it was crazy. Arliss and Russ were great teachers at West Lafayette from another era. And speaking of other eras, where I come from, it's not a cliche and it's not a tired phrase, because this has always been a place, as Denise mentioned, with fabulous teachers. We work really hard to cultivate great teachers. And I will just tell you that going back to the olden days, I think K to 12, the staff that we have in this district now, doesn't take second place to any year. I think they're all great teachers, and that's been a tradition. And when you are in the building every day, what you see is, and I think Sarah and Margaret would agree, teachers who push each other. Nobody wants to be that guy or that gal that's not, working so hard. It's a very, very healthy, competitive teaching place to be, and that's to the benefit of all of the kids that we work with K-12. So unbelievable teachers. One other thing I feared when I became the assistant principal, which is a really tough job, especially if you didn't have a lot of training and you start. I worried about, what did I worry? I worried about parents. I worried about, oh my gosh, I'm going to have confrontations and so on. And really throughout the years, all the way through my administrative career, there have been lots of times when that's been a difficult situation sometimes with parents, but the community has always been a place where at the end, for the almost always, those relationships you disagree sometimes, but it's a very healthy relationship. And the kids, I'm telling you, I run into people that teach in other places, and they said, isn't it a shame that kids have changed so much? And I never agree with that. I think kids are still kids, and I think kids were kids 100 years ago, and I think they will be in the future. So what they're different in is what they're not different. It's the world that's changed around them. And so everybody's products of the environment that we live in. And so fundamentally, kids are still wonderful creatures, and I thoroughly enjoyed teaching. I felt like I was doing my best teaching when I left it, and I'm glad in a way. I was sorry that I left it, but I left on a high note, because the first 5 or 6 years were not really very good. It takes a long time to learn your craft, and I was not gifted from the get-go. So I have great memories of teaching. I have great memories of the kids that have gone through in the classes. And I appreciate all of the boards, this board and the many boards before you, back before many of you lived in this community. People names now that you see, but you don't know them, but they were all people that all had the best interests of the community, the school community in mind. And I think as long as that's what's in everybody's heart, that will continue to be just a fabulous place to raise kids and get education and really have fulfilling careers for the professionals who work in the building. So thank you all very much.
I'm doing some math in my head as you're speaking, and there's well over 100 years of service to the children of this community just among our honorees. And looking around this room, it's at least 250 if my math is right. I was an English girl, but it's an incredible amount of time and care that you've devoted to our children. And I have said many times since I've been on the board that I wish all the kids in the world could have the kind of education that they're given here. And it is because of people like you. So thank you. And I'm going to knock it off before I get all emotional and let our communication from the audience proceed with Mr. Hairstout.
Good evening. My name is Randy Stewart, and as you know, I teach German at the high school. You may also be aware that I just completed my 39th year of teaching, with half of that spent at a rural school district named North White in Monon. And I'm here to ask you, the board, and the community at large to weigh in on the proposed changes for the Indiana High School Diploma as proposed by the Indiana State Board of Education. The State Board is currently taking comments and suggestions on a JOT form on the DOE website. I'm sure that's been passed out. We'll look in the websites and look online. I'm sure you'll find that. I would also encourage you all to directly email the State Board members, because some of them this past week were very clear that they had the same concerns that teachers have. So I would encourage you to do that. And based on my research and discussion across the state, the changes that are proposed for the Indiana High School Diploma are drastic, overreaching, and in many cases impossible to implement. So I'm going to give you 5 problems. The first one, and that's not the only problem, it's just the ones that I'm going to give you tonight. The first one, the GPS and the GPS Plus diplomas lower the standards from the current academic honors diploma and put our students at a great disadvantage in admission and successful completion of college. The current diploma fits well with the majority of the population we teach, as well over 90% of our students go on to post-secondary work. This diploma change is heavily weighted against what the majority of our students and our parents want and need. Number 2, West Lafayette schools have a large number of students who transfer in or out of our district from other states and even internationally. If our coursework in Indiana is radically different than that was required or expected, or if the new students haven't met those standards, we're going to have a massive problem to solve locally. 3, students are expected to have work experiences with both diploma options, both. Who will oversee this to ensure that the job environments adhere to the same requirements for employees undergoing extensive background checks and safety standards? Who's going to ensure that the internship and the work experiences meet the rigorous standards just as our courses are required to meet? And how will we even begin to find the workstations for hundreds of our students annually? 4, requiring students to make career track choices at 7th grade level restricts their flexibility. They're only 12 and 13 years old. It's insane to think that you're going to be able to do that. They have no idea what they will qualify for or what they want to do with their lives. And most importantly, the record keeping and multiple tracks possible will create a nightmare for our already overloaded counselors, and parents will not have the resources to deal with that themselves. These study tracks will be in place for the class of 2029. Our son's one of them. In other words, our students entering 8th grade this fall. And number 5, on a very parochial level, making world languages and history optional will not only make our students less connected to the world, but also give them less flexibility in their career choices. As these courses will have to compete with work and other requirements, it will be increasingly difficult to offer the full palette of options we have now. Again, this makes our students less college ready. That includes the arts, that includes PE, that includes health. There's a whole list of things that have been dumped into a drawer and they just get picked on. I urge you, but also more importantly, the people who are watching at home, to contact the State Board of Education now. The approval process is going to speed up as school starts back. Their goal was to try to get it done in September. They're probably going to try in October, but their mandate is to get it done by December. Something done by December. If we want an academic honors diploma track, we've got to make a big stink about it now. And there are 4,500 people that have responded already statewide. We need to be part of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're correct. My son is one of those affected, and up until quite recently, he wanted to be a YouTuber. So not going to work. Okay, next is our consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion. Moved by Rachel, second. Second by Brad. There are no comments on the consent agenda. So, yes, Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm to request to remove this personnel report from this consent agenda so I can have some comments on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wong has moved to pull the personnel report out of the consent agenda. And in order to do so, all that is required is a second. There is no vote. So is there a second? Dr. Yui, Yes, okay. In that case, the personnel report will be voted on separately. And do we talk about the rest of the consent agenda first? Yes, we would vote on the consent agenda first, so we'll get to that next. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hand. That's 6-0, Mrs. Julian. And that means the next item up is the personnel report. Mr. Wong, I will remind you before you start that we do not discuss individual employees, which would include prospective employees, during public meetings. So with that, go ahead.
Do we need to submit a motion before discussion?
Sure. I need a motion then.
Yeah, okay. Submit.
Moved by Mr. Wong, second by Daisha. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so I'm not going to refer to any particular employees. I just try to have some comments regarding our hiring process. So the background information is we have originally we have hiring plans basically with the board member involved, and later we change the plans so board member won't involved. So I have no problem with that changes. But regarding, I think there's quite several discussions regarding whether or not the board member should be involved with the hiring process. So my opinions, I just share my opinions. I think the board member should be involved somewhat to the hiring process because board member as a stakeholder, same as the students, parents, teachers, admins. You know, we have kids here, we have somebody relative kids work here. So we are kind of one of stakeholders. So from this point of view, I think board members should be more or less participate into the hiring process. But I think the hiring process is totally authority, the decision of school admins. So it should be school admins' decision whether or not involved with the board members. And if you guys invite us, I appreciate that. If you don't invite, that's fine. It's totally, I think it's totally admins' authority and decisions. And but my opinion is, yeah, it would be better off we have involved the board members. But again, that's a school board's, that's a school admin's authority. But the things, one thing I think the school admins can make that better is once you guys decide change the hiring plans, I would like to you guys communicate to all the board members, not part of board members. Some members know that, but some members don't know that. So I think all board members could be treated equally to share the information. That's something I think we can make that better. So that's one thing. Another thing is, my understanding is our school admin changed this hiring plan because our school board's president's advice. So our school board president say, you know, we don't want to get the board member involved, and then we change the plan. So I appreciate Mr. Austin's information sharings regarding the whole decision-making process. I really appreciate that. I think that's kind of accountability of leadership. I appreciate that. But the things is this. I think we are board. We have 7 members. I would like to see these members collectively member. So we board members, we know the things, and then we collectively make a decision. I think, I mean, this is not individual board member or president's decision. So if we can work together, that will help us to build a trust among the school board members and also the information sharings, so we can build a collective board teams. So basically, I think our hiring process is very good. I have no problem with that. Whatever you guys recommend, I appreciate that. A lot of works, but I want to see we work together, make these things even more better. So basically, I want to see a decision-making process more transparent, accountable, and also more inclusive. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to weigh in before I address Lawrence's concerns? Okay. It is correct that the board was involved in the DEI hire to begin with. And when that was paused and second round was opened, in between time, we hired our principal at the high school. And I sought the advice of the ISBA, the Indiana School Board Association, concerning the hiring of Mr. Rogers. And the advice I was given by multiple experts in boardsmanship was that the school board should not be involved in hiring decisions because it blurs the lines of the school board's authority. The only decision the school board should be involved in is the hiring of the superintendent. And so after I was given that advice by multiple people, I spoke with Dr. Greiner and I spoke with the board officers, and I suggested that we no longer be involved. I apologize to yourself and to Rachel for not communicating that to the two of you. It's been kind of a fire hose lately, and I'm doing the best I can. And it was honestly an oversight that I didn't close that loop. I had planned to discuss it with you when the next round of interviews commenced, and it just fell off my radar. There was no malice in that oversight, obviously, because Rachel was one of the people I forgot to tell. So the concern I have, and the concern that I raised with the ISBA when I spoke with them, was that if board members are going to tell you one thing during the search process and then turn around and vote a different way, that makes the hiring decision and the process very difficult. And that was when they came back and said, well, it doesn't matter if they change their mind because they shouldn't be involved. So that seemed like a really easy way to solve that problem. And as for collectively making the decision whether or not to involve the board, we did. It was the board officers, and that's our job. And as the board chair, I assign committees. That's one of my responsibilities. I also work with the superintendent and his office to make the agenda. And so, sure, it would be really nice if we could all be the president, but right now that's me. So that's my response. Does anyone else have anything to say? Sure, Yui, go ahead.
Clarification question, not related to the issues we are talking about. And so the junior high principal's position's title is associate principal. Oh, at least it was, right?
Yes.
And so the replacement will keep that title, or it will
The
change?
replacement will be assistant principal.
So the associate, yeah. So the new principal for the junior high's title is assistant, even though the original one is associate.
That is correct.
Was that the intention, or just I wonder how is that different? Why don't we make the new associate just a? I'm not sure how this thing works. So I thought it was a typo.
I think it implies that the associate oversees the junior, senior high, and the principal would like to be the principal over the junior, senior high overall, as opposed to an associate over the junior high. And so the principal is hiring an assistant principal, so he will have the two assistant principals.
So it's changing the hierarchical structure slightly.
So the current the new junior high principal's responsibility will be different from the original one. That's all.
So we have a new principal coming in. He will work with his assistant principals, and they will determine what duties based on the talent within his team that they will assume. And one of the things that he is doing is he's working with two assistant principals as opposed to an assistant principal and an associate principal, because that's how he hired that position.
Okay. So it's kind of the new principal's decision regarding the title for the junior high principal. It's not like, okay, we have this associate principal position open, then we hire one to fill in that. Okay, I see. Thank you for the
You're welcome.
clarification, because I wasn't sure whether it's a typo or intention.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else have anything to say about the personnel report? Super, all those in favor of approving it, please indicate with a raised hand. That's 6-0, Mrs. Julian. And now we are moving on to board policies. We had a discussion about C375 during our work session, but we need to have the official first reading of that. So because I didn't ask Jesse to come, I'm going to go ahead and do that as soon as I find it. So C375 is regarding the suspension and expulsion of students. For the purposes of this policy, suspension and expulsion shall be defined by Indiana law. The school board will ensure a child is afforded due process before suspension or expulsion. A student may be suspended and or expelled from an activity program or a school if his or her behavior represents misconduct or substantial disobedience while the student is on school grounds immediately before or during school hours or immediately after school hours or at any other time when the school is being used by a school group off school grounds at a school activity, function, or event, or traveling to or from school or a school activity, function, or event. It goes on to further define that, and the issue that we discussed was whether we should keep the language saying the Board of School Trustees has voted not to hear any expulsion appeals. Instead, appeals of expulsion must be filed with the county court, or if we should change that, as some other districts have, to indicate that the board would hear expulsion appeals. And so having read both of those into first reading, we will be able to have the second reading and vote at our next meeting, pending Jesse's weighing in, which I've emailed her about that one. So in that case, we can't vote on anything, and we will move on to new business. And Dr. Greiner, would you like to talk about strategic planning? Oh, I'm sorry.
We ready for a second reading on G350?
Stand by, perhaps.
I thought we did a first reading and this time we have just some pronoun changes and the edit made, but I thought we were ready to go on that one.
We may be. Let me take a look real quick. Where's my spreadsheet?
And it is in our regular.
That is one of the high importance ones. You are correct. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, it's in our regular meeting packet, so it should be due for.
Yep, I'm sorry. I got all excited about being able to move quickly. Okay, this is the one concerning audio, video, and digital recording on school property and of school meetings. So the version that we got from CCHA indicated that there needed to be 3 days of notice to the school if a parent or guardian wanted to audio record a meeting. And a member has suggested that we should change that. It was 3 school days and we're changing it to 3 days. Am I understanding the change correctly? No. Would you like to describe the changes? Yeah. Great.
So it's changing the wording to be more inviting to parents and letting them know that they are allowed to record them, but that they need to inform the school ahead of time. And so it's shifting some of that wording. And the original one that I had sent before it went to legal counsel said just 3 days, but then legal counsel had brought a valid point forward that it should be 3 instructional days. So that was my recommendation, was to say 3 instructional days.
Okay.
What I had sent as my final recommendation.
Got it. Give me just.
The other piece was about having the non-public event, clarifying what people could, when they could record if it was a public event,
Okay.
and changing the pronouns to neutral. Those are the.
Okay, got it. So we have G350 with the pronoun change and non-public events
And instructional days.
and instructional days.
Also, the word, the other part of the recommendation, I had put in the word should, inform the staff, and legal counsel had recommended, they felt like shall was a more appropriate word, which I don't have any issue with. And so both those two words I had added to the revision and said to go ahead and do, like that I supported adjusting that revision to that.
Okay, so neutral pronouns, shall, not should, and 3 instructional days. Those are the only changes. And is everyone okay with those changes?
I think it's okay. But, no, go ahead.
Okay, try not to muddy the water for me
Yeah,
for a
go
minute.
ahead. You can go first.
Yui, do you have something to say about any of those 3 changes? The neutral pronouns, the shall instead of should, and the 3 instructional days?
And just the section 3 is empty right now.
Yeah, Roberta and I talked about that, and that was just a typo. It's just, the next section should be 3. Anything else?
Yeah, I just wondering this, the corporation property, shall we take into the consideration of school bus? I mean, there's,
Yeah, that would include
include, are we
transportation.
talking
Yeah.
about that? Oh, okay. But I didn't see that on this policy, so I'm just wondering.
Buses are corporation policy was what we discussed in
Property,
legal.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's in item, currently in item 5 in that first line.
I don't find, on this policy, 375?
On
It's in
350.
350. Look-
350?
It's right here. Recordings made at classroom or other corporation property, so that includes buses.
Oh, but I didn't see, that's what I'm saying, I see a school corporation. There's a definition of the school corporation properties, but I didn't see there's bus on that, so there's.
Where's the
corporation
definition?
Properties, I think probably, maybe we should include the school bus in there.
Corporation property includes any building owned or leased by the corporation, including parking lots, athletic facilities, vehicles owned, leased, or operated by the corporation.
Vehicles, okay.
Yeah, school buses are vehicles.
Okay, so that should be included.
Yep.
Another thing, I think we have the item 3 is a meeting with parents. It's basically between school and the parents, guardians. But shall we include a meeting between employees? You know, they have some meetings. So I think probably we shouldn't allow people records during that kind of meeting. We have an old policy. Let's see what that.
Well, it says the corporation as a whole, so that would include teachers, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they say employees, but they mentioned that employee, but we have old policy 3363, I think 3363. That's regarding recording in the workplace, and specifically prohibit any recordings between the employees conference meetings because there maybe they discuss some sensitivity student information or something like that. So I think probably we may need that a little bit more specifically clause in there regarding that.
Audio recordings may be permitted. I don't think we need to specifically call out who those meetings might be with, because it's any corporation employee would be included under corporation.
Yeah, so the general policy says this policy applies to all corporation employees, students, parents, guardians, visitors, and third parties on corporation policy, property.
Yeah, so that would include teachers. I don't think we need to specify teachers.
Section 2. in the
Yeah.
first
Yeah, I
line.
saw that. Yeah, I saw that. I'm just wondering because the section 3 is basically a meeting between parents and employees. But
Are teachers employees?
I think it's employees.
Teachers are employees.
Yeah, general speaking, right?
Yeah.
So, but the item 3, section 3 is a meeting, basically the regulations about parents and school employees meeting. So I'm thinking probably we need another section. But if you think it's already covered, then that's
I
fine.
think it's covered.
Okay, then that's okay.
Can't imagine that our legal counsel would have left out teachers in a school
Oh, maybe,
Policy.
maybe you can ask teacher council.
The scope of the policy, I'm sorry, let me raise.
Please, no.
Go
The
ahead.
scope of the policy is outlined in section 2. So in section 1, if you look at it, starting just from like pretend we're in high school social studies and we need to cram for the test, we're going to read all the bold print. So if you look at item 1, it says these are the definitions. So these are the terms that are going to be within. If you look at item 2, it's just the general policy. It outlines everything that the policy includes, and it states clearly employees. If you look at section 3, and our heading is off there, but specifically it outlines then meetings with parents and guardians. It specifically outlines the place, the classrooms and other property, and then it goes through what a violation would look like were one to exist. So it really is quite comprehensive of a framework. It doesn't have to, each section doesn't have to specifically list each component as long as it's covered in the overarching header, if that makes sense. So I'm not an attorney, but I feel this is very comprehensive.
But that's my understanding, this, the section second, the general policy, basically, if you are in building, no matter your employee, students, parents, guardians, you are subject to the videos, security video things, that kind of thing. That's my understanding. But, I mean, as Rachel said, I think probably it's already covered, so that's fine. So I'm not, I think that's okay.
We good? Would we like to go ahead and vote on it as amended then? Is that where we're at with this? With the neutral pronouns, the shall instead of should, and the 3 instructional days? Everybody?
Approving the policy, or you're going to take, because right now there's 2 different revisions. There's the revisions that CCHA sent, and then there's the revisions that I had shared.
Mm-hmm.
Are you proposing that we're passing the policy, or you're proposing that we're accepting both the revisions?
Passing the policy with the revisions, yeah.
The first round, your changes were made, and now the second round, so yours are not red on this.
They're blue.
They're put in black. So when we came through on first, I think they changed those in that pass, and then between that first pass and the second pass, they've added the red. So if you go and read it, it has your changes in there.
So read with me what you're reading right now.
It's suggested revision G350 audio, video, and digital recording.pdf, which is under the work session folder.
No,
No,
it's in our regular meeting folder for review and approval right now.
okay.
So if you
So
go
you're
to
on a
our
different
regular
one than I
meeting
am.
documents, it is at the bottom of the lineup.
So will you read to me what the third
I am in item,
section says?
yeah, so again, the spacing is off. So on this version, it's in item 4. And it says, if a parent or guardian wishes to audio record a meeting, they shall inform the corporation with 3 instructional days notice prior to the scheduled meeting. So that is your change from last time. It's hit it on this one in the black, exactly the way you worded it. Now they've changed the pronouns and changed non-public events, which is the change that we discussed in our last work session. So this incorporates all of the proposed, this version in our board meeting packet incorporates all changes.
The copy, I think there are several copies. You
Yes.
talk about the copy in the regular meeting, right?
Go to our regular meeting packet that we're
Yeah.
reviewing for today, and it's the last document,
Yeah.
G350 audio, video, and digital recording.
Yeah, did you find in that copy, there's a non-public event things?
Yes.
You have that one?
Yep.
Yeah, I print out, maybe I did it wrong now. Is that one highlighted?
It's on page 3.
That copy?
Yeah, you
In
have
red.
the older version.
Oh, this old one, okay, so that's why, okay, so maybe, I
So
think.
if it's up for a vote in the meeting, it'll be in our meeting document packet, because that's what's released to the public.
Yeah, I think I copied this out this afternoon, so I don't know if this, the latest one, because I didn't see the non-public event. That's the last time we talked, so I think,
Yeah, you have,
Is it possible that you took it, is it possible that you took it from the work session?
no, I think, I know there's another version in the work session folder, but I specifically print out from the regular board meeting sessions.
Okay,
thought
so
that's
knowing
related
that
to-
it has the changes that were suggested, are we comfortable going forward with a vote on adopting this policy?
I'm not.
Okay, you're
I don't
not.
feel like any of us are clear
Yeah.
on what is being done, and I think if we're going to pass
Do you
a
want me to read
policy,
it? I don't
it
know.
has to be very clear.
Or I can send you the link to what,
So to just
think we can-
share,
I think
on
we
the
can-
school's website, when you go to the board meeting packet for today's regular meeting, and you go to G350, what it has is it has CCHA's recommendations. It does not have the recommendations that I have submitted.
okay, but if you go to box and you go to our documents, it does have your,
Right, I think Dacia's point is well taken, that if the incorrect document was uploaded in the board
Okay.
packet, then that it hasn't correctly been posted for review.
okay,
Technically, legally, we could still vote on it today, but if the wrong upload is up there, then it's the wrong upload.
okay. So we need to upload the version that is in the board packet in box to the
final version.
website, and then we can vote on it.
Next time.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Got that? Great, thank you.
But I
Okay.
mean, today we can vote
Jesus.
for the changes, right? Whatever proposal.
We don't need to, we already voted on the changes. The changes are in it.
We already will change?
Well, we vote on the final policy, that's just, there's no vote on,
Okay. And then today will be kind of, after today, we put the final version, that's kind of a first reading. So next month we will vote on that.
Sure.
We don't have any changes during the next
Except we're not gonna meet
Okay,
next
gotcha.
month. We're gonna meet in
Not next
August.
month, maybe August, right? Next month. We.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we
Gotcha.
good?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. No problem.
Cool. Great. So, can we move on then to strategic planning? Was that everything? Okay, great. Go ahead.
All right, you have before you the agreement with Skybound Education for strategic planning. It's my recommendation that the board vote to approve this agreement at this time.
Need a motion. Moved by Rachel, seconded by Lawrence. Any discussion? Okay. Sure.
So I really appreciate, I feel like this has been a great process, that there's been lots of discussion, there was information shared with the board, a presentation. So I just feel like that the time has been spent, that we knew what we were voting on, and we're considering much of that. So I really appreciate the months it's taken to get us all together. I did have a couple questions. The first was, they had talked about collecting data. Is that data something that is, and you may not know the answer now, and that's okay, because I know I didn't ask this question ahead of time. Will that data be something that's shared with, the committee that works on this, once they have collected that data?
I believe so, because if you study the proposal, which I know you have because the question you're asking, and I know that you, yeah. I think that they're going to work with the group, that focus group that works throughout the process. So yes, it will be a collaborative process looking at data and making decisions accordingly.
Perfect. And then my second question is, my understanding is that if this is approved, this summer they will meet with the superintendent and then possibly school board members. From listening to the options, it sounds like most school districts, if I understood correctly, meet with superintendent and school board members. Some have chosen to just meet with the superintendent. So my question is, who will be involved in this meeting?
So my goal is, and I actually was going to say this in my report part, if you approve.
Okay.
So I'm not being presumptuous here. I'm assuming, and so then I'll say this now instead of later. But the next step would be in July for our team to sit down with them, understand a timeline, discuss a logical timeline, and discuss next steps to absolutely discuss with the board as well. But the initial meeting that I plan to hold after we sign the agreement, send it back to them. In that initial meeting, my plan was to have our team sit down and discuss, and then discuss how we go about the process of involving the board.
With the whole board, not just, we have times that it's just the board leadership, and so I'm hoping that this one is going to allow all board to be involved and not the board leadership, and so I didn't know what your plan is.
So with the focus groups, I think those are all things we need to discuss with them. And so I can see them certainly engaging in dialogue with the entire board. As far as what the board participation looks like with focus groups and so forth moving forward, if the board could discuss what the board hopes that looks like and maybe talk with Amy, we can certainly entertain the level that the board wants to be involved. whole versus.
Okay, and so that's what I guess I was trying to understand before this is approved, is how much is in the superintendent making the decision and involving board members, and how much will be the leadership? Because we've had plenty of instances where it is the same leadership and removing certain board members from having information or input. And I think it would be helpful if, you know, any part of board information is not just coming from board leadership, but allows other viewpoints besides theirs.
And so for clarification, do you mean once we decide what those focus groups look like, do you mean like the facilitator of this company coming and speaking to the board in like a public meeting?
Well, from what I was understanding, but I mean, I've tried to talk to a lot of different and understand how this works, is if I understand correctly, the focus group will be something that's created after meeting with you this summer, and it will involve teachers, students, parents, central office. It'll be a big,
Yes.
lots of different groups. But my understanding is even some of this direction on where they want to go with the strategic plan, it sounded like it can be solely administration, school board has no say in it. And I don't mean not because they're not respecting the school board, but their school board saying, I don't want anything to do with this, you do it, administration. Then there's the model of administration and the board leadership gives input. The rest of the school board members are not allowed to give any input about it. And then there's the model of administration and allowing all school board members to give input before the focus groups, if I understood from the presentations and talking. And so that's what I'm trying to understand, kind of that vision before we get there.
Just one second. So I don't want to speak for you, but I think in speaking with Dr. Greiner about this process, it is extremely important to him and his team, and also to me, that we develop a strategic plan that all of us can get behind and support. And in order to do that, we're going to need to all be involved. I don't have any plans to limit the involvement of the board, but I also don't think it would be efficient for the board to be involved at a micro level. It's hard to get all 7 of us together on a Monday, let alone repeatedly. So I think that I want to assure you that it's our goal, not speaking for you, to find in this process a unifying direction so that we can all look at an issue. Let's say the kindergartners are beating the seniors at flag football. It doesn't matter what. If we look at that issue and we say, does that or does that not support the strategic plan? And if it has nothing to do with the strategic plan, we say, okay, we may address that at a later time, but right now we're working on this plan so that Dr. Greiner and his team can remain focused on that vision, that direction that we all agree on. And in order to do that, it's going to take all of us having input and being involved, and also accepting the input of one another and of the greater community. Does that answer? Great. Is that?
Well said, just because we do want it collective. We want to all be on the same page for this one. And I will reach out there and say that our principals want it too, that we want a unified approach where we're all working together to serve. And we think this strategic plan is a great way to do that. So we have high hopes, as you have high hopes, so we won't let you down.
Great. Thanks. Yes, Rachel.
I just want to point out that the time to ask, it's a little bit ironic to hear you say that you're concerned about all of the board being available in the process when you were not able to attend the meeting where we interviewed these vendors and had these conversations. It is important that we all be on the same page and be developing in a strategic plan. My concern, and what I would add on to what Dr. Reiner and Amy have said, is that we sit with the information and we sit in this meeting and we give our viewpoint on all sundry of matters, and who we do not hear from as thoroughly are our teachers and our non-certified personnel and our parents and our students. And if the strategic plan is truly to be something the whole board and leadership can get behind, it's going to be those voices that I have more interest in hearing than the 7 of us sitting at this table. So that would be kind of my strong preference is that we keep, as with all things, focused on our students and not on our own agendas.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, you. Thank
To
you.
involve all the board members.
I appreciate
And
saying that.
another thing, just to clarify, so in 3.5, and they talk about they won't keep the data.
Okay.
Right? But I wonder, just a clarification, whether we will have access to the data that they collected in case whoever wants to do a second analysis of those
The raw data?
collected. Yeah, right. For example, let's say we have the EE person here, right, who might know the data analysis, who may want to look at a certain data which is not necessary in their overall report. So we will have the ownership of the data that they help collect.
So I can certainly check into that.
Oh, okay.
That would be
I assume the answer is yes, but because they say they don't keep it, I
Someone
guess
should
that
keep
doesn't
it.
mean that
Yeah.
they will destroy it, right? So we pay for it, and
I
that
would
data
think
is
we
about
would
our students.
own it.
We'll
Right.
At the
continue to
end.
be
Okay.
members when we're done. I would assume yes, but let's get.
Yeah. it should
I'm assuming, but I want to
Right.
ask just to make sure. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, so we have a motion. If that's all the discussion, we can go ahead and vote to approve the consultant for strategic planning. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's everybody, Mrs. Julian. Great. Moving right along to quantitative reasoning course curricular materials adoption. And Mrs. Roth.
Bet. Final recommendations regarding curricular materials to be adopted for a newly offered course at the junior senior high school called quantitative reasoning. Those recommendations were shared in the memo included in the board packet. The process for making the recommendation followed the same process as the recommendation for the recent K through 12 reading and literacy adoption. It was a robust process involving not only teachers, but feedback from families. And I thank Dr. McKee, Mrs. Huckstep, and Mr. Schreiner for their time in professionalism in working together, but also including families. I respectfully request that this recommendation be approved, and thank you for your consideration in this matter.
Thank you. All right, I need a motion, please. Moved by Mr. Marley, seconded by Lawrence. Any discussion? Sure, Lawrence, go ahead.
The document, I really appreciate Anna and the teacher, Ricky, Mackie, Carrie, Hackstaff, teachers and principals, everybody's work, parents work on that curriculum. I just have some clarifications. So basically, I understand this course is 1 credit, right? 1 credit class,
It can be 1 credit or it can be 2 credit. It can be
Okay.
a 1 semester or 2 semester course.
and then this credit will be counted toward the
It
diploma.
counts as a math credit.
And this will be also, we follow the Indiana academic standard.
Yes, it's a course in the Indiana Academic Course Code.
Okay, and also, do we have enrollment estimate? How many students will go ahead and enroll in this kind of?
No, I would not know that. It would have been recommended, I'm assuming, to offer another course to students that would qualify for a math course or a quantitative reasoning course. So it's filling a need for students.
So I don't want, I just want, I mean, my question just, I don't want to, I mean, we open the new class, assign teachers, everything results, and there are only 3 or 4 people show up.
No, if a class doesn't run, they won't run it. They would place kids, basically you would have to have a certain number of kids to run a course.
Oh, okay,
So
okay, thank you.
unless it's
Appreciate
for courses that are particular, you would run them. Obviously, you would want a physics course, even if only 3 children signed up for it. You would still want to offer physics, but for
That's
courses
required.
where it's an elective or an alternative, you would consider that carefully to meet student needs.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Great. All those in favor, please show your hands. And that's everybody, Mrs. Julian. And now we will go to Mrs. Fitzsimmons and the food service presentation.
Hello. Hi. Who's excited about food service? Yeah, everyone loves food. I'm Courtney Fitzsimmons. I am the food service director, and I'm also a dietitian. And actually, if you go back, I want to point out that picture. is of the intermediate kitchen staff on our National School Lunch Hero Day, which is always the first Friday of May. And the manager out there had all the students sign their aprons that they wore that day. So it was a super cute idea. So, okay. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about food service funding. We are a self-supporting department, which means everything we pay for comes out of the food service funds. So payroll, food costs, all of that stuff we pay for ourselves. That being said, though, the corporation does support us. They don't charge us anything indirectly, such as electricity, custodial fees, things like that. So we still, work well together, and they do help us indirectly as well. It's important as a food service department that we stay self-sufficient so that corporation funds can be spent elsewhere. Those funds, that budget's getting tighter and tighter, and so it's just important that we are one less thing that the corporation needs to worry about financially. We are also one of the only federal programs in the corporation where most others are funded at the state level. So that's a big difference between us as well. So let's talk about where our funding comes from. We actually have, you can go back again. You're not reading my mind as well as I thought you would. Okay, so it comes from two different sources. We get it from the USDA reimbursement, which is money that comes after we feed students. We keep track of how many reimbursable meals they ate, and then we turn that number in the form of a claim, and then they reimburse us a specific amount. And so you can see based on free, reduced, paid, how much they give us per student. And then the student rate is the other source of income that we get, and that's what they pay for the meals. So if they're free, they don't pay anything. Reduced, those are actually also set by the USDA. So we charge 30 cents for breakfast and 40 cents for lunch. And then locally, at the local level, we decide what to charge for our paid students. So breakfast, we have at $2.25. The elementary and the intermediate, we have at $3, and then $3.25 at the junior, senior high school. So those are a little bit higher than if you look at some of the other districts around, but we have a lot of options. I like to think we have better food. I might be a little biased, but then you can see the total of what we get per student that eats. We're at 23% free and reduced. So I did a little bit of math to figure out the average amount of food that we get for each, or the money that we get for each lunch. And that averages out to be about $3.77. You'll notice that the free and reduced actually get a higher amount back than what we do for the paid students. And so we actually have, because we are a lower free and reduced corporation, we have to come up with some other ways to bring in funding because we get less money back in reimbursement than the higher free and reduced corporations do. I also put adult on there. I get this question a lot of why do adults have to pay more than students, even though it's the same portion sizes? That's because even for a paid student, we still get reimbursement back from the USDA, but we don't get anything for an adult. And so we're required to charge more for that. And then also we have to charge the amount of entitlement dollars that we get in the form of commodities to make up that difference as well. One more thing that I don't think I've ever really done before for you guys is to break down how much money we actually have to spend on a meal. So typically 40 to 45% is what you would want to spend on the food costs. And then 40 to 45% is spent on labor. And then that other 10% is for anything like equipment needs, things like that that come up. So if you take 45% of the $3.77, we are looking at about $1.70 for each lunch, which is not very much. It's a very tight budget. 22 cents, milk fluctuates, but it's usually about 22 cents for a milk. And then we try to keep entrees around 90 cents. And then fruits and vegetables around 58 cents. And we do offer a full cup of fruit and a full cup of veggies minimum at every level. So Oh, and then the other thing I have, sorry, I got a lot of stuff on here. Funding sources. This is just to show you that our USDA reimbursement is about 39% of our income. The student meal sales is 42%, and then a la carte is 18.5%. So we do have a la carte. We bring that in to help us have more funds to do better meals, get some nicer quality products. It just helps us carry the program a little bit. A la carte does. Okay. So as you can see, it's a tight budget. So we want to make sure that we're good stewards of our money. And one way that we're doing that is we are in K-12's Leading Indiana Co-op, which is CLIC. We've been in that for 6 years now. It represents 68 school districts in Indiana and about 160,000 students. So the purchasing power of buying for 160,000 students is much better than 2,000 that we have here. That's why it's so important to be in a co-op. I actually have also been in the advisory board position for the last 3 years in this co-op. And what we do, everyone who's a member can go monthly and we try the newest foods. We say if we think they're good, not good, take them back, do some taste testings, things like that. We're kind of a picky group, so I like to think we get the best of the best with the products. And then what they do is they decide what we want, and CLIC does all of the contracts, and they are procuring them in accordance with Indiana and USDA purchasing codes. And so later we're going to have a recommendation that these are the ones that we purchase from. These are all ones we've been using in the past. The only one that is changing is Prairie Farms will be different than Dairy Farmers of America, which we were using this past year. Okay, this is the fun stuff. So in May, early May, we decided to survey students and parents. And at the Red Devil Dining Court, we gave these surveys to the students. And we had a pretty good response rate, 132 responses. And you can see kind of about 51.5% of those were 7th and 8th graders. And then 28.8% who responded were freshmen and sophomores. And then 19.7% were juniors and seniors. So I'm happy to report that out of the 132, 115 were neutral to highly satisfied, which is 96% of our students. I found that very encouraging because it is hard to make everybody happy and make sure that everyone has a good experience. And I did put, so 5 were unsatisfied, and I did put that comment because I thought it was funny. Someone said, I gave it a 1 because mashed potatoes and chicken noodles isn't every day. So. That might have been Mr. No, you're lasagna, right? Yeah, lasagna. It's a favorite. Yeah. Good. Okay, so these are some of the favorites that came up multiple times. Grilled cheese tomato soup, wings, that's a favorite. Orange chicken, chicken noodles. All the bars that we have, the Fiesta bar, pasta bar, mac and cheese bar, breakfast bowl. What we do is we try to make things as customizable as possible so that the students can really dictate what goes on those items. And so I think that they notice that and they like that, and that's why those are super important. Some other favorites, Salisbury steak, that's my personal favorite, Alfredo, things like that. Okay. So these are student comments and suggestions. I compiled a list of them, and Ivan and I actually go through these each individually, and we try to figure out what we can implement for next year. So some of the things that we looked at, nachos weekly, that means our Fiesta bar. We were doing it twice a month, and now we're doing it every week, so we are going to do that next year. I liked the Beijing beef. We're going to try to do something like that. Offer simple proteins. We're looking into more a la carte protein options. More cultural food. We're looking into things like that. That one can be a difficult one because our vendors, we have to buy from, not have to, but typically you buy from K-12 specific vendors. And so we kind of have to wait until they come out with something that we're able to use. But we are trying to jump on some of those more cultural different foods as they're available to us. Some comments about liking the staff, some not so good comments. Let's see what's on there. Rolls are dry. I don't know. So we'll work better on rolls. But we're still alive. So good job. That's a good one up there. So, okay. So then at the elementary and the intermediate, we did a student parent survey. We sent this to the parents and encouraged them to fill it out with their students. We didn't get quite as many responses on this one, but still pretty good, 91. 59.3% of those were from the elementary and 40.7% were from the intermediate. Not quite as highly satisfied as the junior, senior high school, which makes sense. We don't have as many options there. But it's still an 88%, which is a B+. So that's pretty good. And let's take a look at some of their favorites. Same things, a lot of the same things as the junior, senior high school: walking taco, spaghetti, Italian rotini, plant-based nuggets, pasta, pizza, chicken nuggets. A lot of different options on there that they like. Okay, so these are comments and suggestions that we got from our survey. And again, we look through them, decide what is something that we can incorporate for next year, things that are feasible for us. I was a little surprised there were some more negative comments on this one, which can be discouraging. But then I realized that a lot of the ones that were negative are actually things that we're already doing, and that I just need to do a better job of communicating that. I think there's some misconceptions about our food, and so that's why I want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about what's required on our menu and the things that we are doing, and then I want to do like a did you know that I'll send out at the beginning of the year for parents to learn more as well. So we'll start with the common misconception. So there is a misconception that school food is unhealthy. That has been a misconception for a long time. And actually, in April 2021, the Journal of the American Medical Association came out with a 15-year span survey. And what they found, they studied diets of 21,000 children and 40,000 adults between 2003 and 2018. And they found that foods consumed at schools improved significantly over the 15-year span and provided the best mean diet quality of all major U.S. sources. So essentially, schools are now the single healthiest place Americans are eating, which is very surprising, especially as you look at the menu and you might say, well, how is mac and cheese okay? Or how is this okay? But we'll get into that. Let's go. So did you know? All National School Lunch Program guidelines come from the USDA, and the USDA is also the one that does the guidelines, the dietary guidelines for Americans. So they want those to match as much as possible. So our National School Lunch Program guidelines are coming from what they say Americans should eat to be healthy. There's always a little bit of a lag there because they come out with dietary guidelines for Americans every 5 years. And so it takes a while then for the National School Lunch Program to revise, and then they have to have a period where people comment, and then they take the revisions. So right now we are really getting into sugar, which is on the 2020 dietary guidelines, and then that's coming in our future is the amount of sugar is something that we'll be looking in the future. So we offer a minimum of 1 cup of fruit and 1 cup of vegetables at all the schools, all the levels, and the students are able to take all of that every day. So a lot of times I'll get comments that there's not enough food for my kids. I would encourage, if that's something that a kid is telling you, to ask if they're taking the full cup of fruit and the full cup of vegetable that's being offered. It's a decent sized portion, and it should be enough. Now, it is hard when you're you can't really find a one size fits all because kids, their needs are so different based on are they in an athletic thing, are they not? But that's also why we have some a la carte or allow them to purchase additional entrees or sides or something like that if they need to. So fruit that we offer is either fresh or canned in 100% juice, or it's 100% fruit juice. So one of the comments was saying it's in high sugar. It is not. None of our fruits have added sugar in them. Even our flavored applesauce, they're not. There's no added sugar. So anything like that, we don't add additional sugar to fruit. We offer vegetable subgroups. So every week we're required to have dark green, red orange, beans, starchy, and other. And all of them are fresh, steamed, or baked. So another comment that we got a lot was that everything is fried, too much fried stuff. We actually don't own fryers. We've never owned fryers since I've been here, so we're not frying anything. Something exciting for next year is the DoD Fresh program. This is a new program for us. Again, it goes back to our entitlement dollars and what we spend our kind of free money on. And so I put some of that towards this DoD Fresh, and I'm hoping that that allows us to increase our variety of fruits and vegetables. A lot of kids want strawberries and blueberries, and those can be kind of costly with our strict budget. And so I'm hoping that this gives us the opportunity to bring in some more of those items that we traditionally don't get to see. There was also a comment about using local companies. And so we partner with Piazza Produce, and they actually already partner with local companies. And so when you log in and you order things, it'll tell you if it's local, from a local place. I think this is something that I'm also interested in the future, looking to see what else we can do to partner with local companies. We've talked about that a little bit. 80% of our grains are whole grain rich, and the remaining are whole grain rich, and the remaining grains are enriched. So, and they're required to take 2-ounce equivalents, which is why some meals seem carb heavy. So I've gotten the question before, why are there so many carbs in your meals? We're required to give them 2-ounce equivalents. I like to use the example of a baked potato bar. We used to do a baked potato bar, and on that, because the potato is categorized as the vegetable, we're still required to give a 2-ounce equivalent grain. And so it did seem very carb heavy. But because of the way the guidelines are written, that's why we still had to give them that. With the 80% grains, we're happy that we have a little bit of leeway because some things don't necessarily hold well in the whole grain form. Tortilla shells. The whole grain form, those tend to break really easy and tear, and so we're happy to use the regular white version, or pasta. If you're holding pasta for a long time, the whole grain version doesn't always hold up well. But all of our hamburger buns, our breads, our chicken nuggets are even whole grain. Most of our items are actually whole grain. Okay, so most grade levels require 2-ounce equivalent protein. So same as the grains, we have to have 2-ounce equivalents. And we actually offer vegetarian options every day at all grade levels. So even the elementary, who only have 2 options a day, one is always a vegetarian option. The vegetarian options still must meet the protein requirements. And so the way a lot of K-12 manufacturers do this is by using cheese and other dairy products. So a lot of times those vegetarian options are very cheese heavy, which I know is another kind of complaint that we've gotten some. But within the last year or so, the K-12 industry has gotten, the plant-based proteins have started entering the industry. And so at semester, we were able to add a chicken sandwich and chicken nuggets, which look and taste like regular chicken nuggets, but they are completely plant-based. They are very good. I actually went to something last summer, and they had a panel of kids, and I think there were 6 or 8 kids on there, and all of them picked the protein-based nugget over a regular chicken nugget. So I think that's the direction that the industry is going. I think it's just taking some time to get there. So we have those at all the menus, or all the levels. And then at the junior senior high school, we also have the black bean burger and the Impossible Burger. We're required to offer fat-free and low-fat milk at all levels and are not allowed to replace it with water. That's a question we get a lot too. We have to have that milk component. Now, they don't have to take it because we use offer versus serve, but we can't allow water in place of it. And then soy milk is available for lactose intolerant students. Okay. The guidelines have specifications for calories, saturated fat, sodium content, and then in the next few years, sugar. The reason it takes a little while to do that is because once we know what the actual guidelines are, it takes manufacturers some time to reformulate to get some of those popular items with less sugar. And most K-12 specific items already account for these regulations. So we're already buying low sodium things. We don't add salt to pretty much anything anymore. So we're doing pretty good there. We can provide meals for students with special diets. I did get a couple comments about I can't eat because I need a special diet. We do gluten-free meals, we do dairy-free, we do egg-free. So if a parent ever has a question, encourage them to talk to me. I am also a dietitian, so I can help make sure that we're giving their student exactly what they need. And then everything sold a la carte must also follow Smart Snack guidelines. And these are pretty specific as well. It has to be whole grain, and we have to input it into a calculator, and then it says if it's compliant or not. So there's a lot of regulations on what we're able to sell, even a la carte. I added sushi this past year, which has been a popular one. I know your daughter would get it. But even our sushi, since that was sold a la carte, we had to have it made with whole grain rice. So Sushi Boss actually made that for us. Okay. What kind of questions do you guys have? Yeah.
Roughly, you don't have to give me a specific number, but like roughly what percentage of our kids are packing versus buying lunch?
Yeah.
At the junior, senior, or
I think
at
it's
all the
about,
schools?
I think we're about at 60%.
Okay.
Which, talking to other food service directors, is pretty good for a high school, junior, senior high school. That's 60%.
Criteria?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And that's just based on meals. So we also have a lot of kids that will come in and get a la carte, or will get a partial meal. They'll just get an entree. Those aren't included in that 60%. Yep.
But could you talk a little bit about how you've addressed food waste in the schools?
Yes. So food waste is hard. It doesn't benefit anybody. One thing that we do is we do offer versus serve. So instead of requiring, we have all these components that we have to offer. And instead of requiring them to take all of them, they can just take up to 3 of them. So we encourage them really to only take what they're gonna eat. We did try at the junior, senior high school this past year, we tried to do a donation of stuff that wasn't eaten to LUM, but there really wasn't much that was put in there. So we never really made a donation, but yeah, I think it helps.
Wasn't there a thing at the elementary school where if they had like an applesauce they didn't want, they could put it in the thing and then
Yes.
another kid could take
Do you
it?
guys still do your share tables?
Share tables, thank you. Could not
Okay,
remember
okay.
what that was called.
Yeah. So yeah, the share table is anything that's unopened can go in there, kept on ice. And then especially milk is a big one. A lot of the kids don't necessarily want their milk. They don't have to take it, but if they do take it, they can put it in there. And then even kids who bring a lunch from home can go grab that milk or something like that. So,
That's
yeah.
sweet. I like that you do that.
That if they, don't want it for lunch, then they can hold on to it for tomorrow's snack.
Yep, it's perfect.
Great.
Regarding the survey result, do we have last year we have survey?
Last year I did not do a survey.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, it had been, it had been a couple years since I had done a survey. So it was definitely time.
Okay, that's fine. And regarding the survey between the junior, senior high school and elementary school, I mean, the survey, the dissatisfaction over there is higher than the junior, senior high school. So this is a mirror what I heard from the student. So other than the less varieties, fewer variety provide in the intermediate school, elementary school, as you said, that's probably the reason contribute to these things. Is there any other reasons or anything we can make that better?
So when I was reading through some of those comments, I knew like a lot of those comments weren't necessarily true, like you fry too much. And so I think it was that misconception between was the parent filling out the survey kind of going in blind, not really knowing what their kids are really getting, or were they doing it with the kids? When I released the survey, it was interesting because it was during school hours, and I had like 30 responses while school was still going. So I knew those were parents filling them out kind of based on their thoughts and probably what they see on the menu, but they're not actually in person seeing the setup. And one thing that I want to do this upcoming year is to have a social media presence to show pictures, what it
Yeah, I
looks
think
like.
that's good. Yeah.
See all the different colors of fruits and vegetables that we have and things like that.
Yes, thank you. I think you already answered my another question. Basically, I think we are kind of education institute, and I like the missions from your department. Basically, you're saying we will encourage a healthy eating habit that lasts lifelong.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of kind of education to parents and also students, including me. I read these things, I learn a lot of things I don't know. So
Yeah.
very likely, if I don't know, probably there's some other people also.
Yeah,
Don't know. So I think that's great. Another question I have, last question, maybe not for you, but maybe Dr. Grana can answer me. I heard so many students tell me the fountain waters, when they drink that, they have some odors. So I didn't try that yet. I didn't have a chance to try. I will try it maybe another day. So I just wondering, the thing is this, if they don't want to drink the fountain waters, they have to buy some bottled waters. That's a little bit expensive. So I just wondering, what? No, it's odors.
An odor,
there's
like
Odors. Oh,
odors,
Yeah.
odors. So I think maybe that's some of the maintenance people's the job to check, make sure, because the thing is this. There's parents, they collect the sample waters and then they test in school. I don't know what that number is, but they get numbers, school water numbers 200, readings 200 something. So like this bottled water, that's something like 50. So the lower number, the better. And I also got some samples from Purdue's fountains, and Purdue's is not as good as what we have. But I tasted that water. I didn't taste any smells, odors. But I heard so many students saying the school fountains, the water, they don't want to drink that. They have to buy water.
Because Larry and I actually talked about this past year, and he has done testing on the water fountains to ensure that there's nothing bad in there. The city water is not the greatest that's coming into the building, and we also do not have water softeners at the high school, and so that might be why there is a little bit different of a taste or an odor. I don't think it's necessarily so much at the elementary or intermediate, because we do have water softeners, I believe, especially at the intermediate. I'm not sure at the elementary, but we have looked into that, just so that you know.
Okay, I'm trying to understand. You say the elementary school and the intermediate school, they have softener?
They have water softeners, yes.
So, okay.
The high
so-
school is so old, they
Okay.
don't have those yet. And that is actually kind of unusual. I'm not used to having water softeners in buildings, so I don't think we had them at all at Kokomo.
But my question is, if our household, I mean, we have some things, the filters, we can make the same city waters, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can make that kind of out-free and then drink, you cannot smell anything. So can we school do that?
I didn't understand.
Those are expensive. They're
Oh, big
expensive units. I mean,
Oh,
we
boy.
do not modify the water, the city
very
water in my
Okay.
house.
Okay.
And my children routinely drink the exact same water at school and they're all still living and growing fine and being okay. So it's a little bit of first world problem. It's kind of drink the water if you're thirsty is what I would say about that. The reverse osmosis filtering systems are extremely expensive for a school corporation of our size or any entity of our size.
And
The key is testing.
And the water is coming from the city. The city tests the water that is provided. And so we don't have the issues with lead pipes or anything like that, like you hear. And like I said, Larry did do some testing in the building, because we did hear some of those comments, and there is not anything wrong with the water. I mean, water coming from my house might be a little funky, just depends on where you live and where it's coming from. So. Yeah.
I do think at all three schools, they allow kids to bring in their own water as well.
Okay.
Right, and you let them bring them in the classroom. So they could always fill up a big water bottle from home if they like that water better. And
But I mean, the fountain water is cold, and then it's very
Yeah.
convenient. You go there and drink. So can we, because I mean, in the household, say, my household, we have softeners and also filters. So the water come out is pretty good. And they do some testings. So just wondering, can we school do that, or maybe?
We could do anything, but
But
there's
they
always
do
costs
depends-
associated with stuff, and that you're getting into a lot of money that's going to cost us to put in systems like that.
Okay.
I was actually pricing water fountains, the ones with the bottle filler. How much do you think those cost? Just the regular one on the wall that's got the bottle? $2,000. I was gobsmacked. I could not believe. So it's not cheap to do a whole building. I'm just saying.
The majority of the kids do have their water full. Honestly, I don't see a lot of kids leaving to go get more water. Most of them have enough for the day as well. It's not an issue.
So basically, my question, do we have an estimate, say, if we want to have softeners or something like that, how much it will cost?
Well, I don't know that off the top of my head, but for a commercial size, that would probably be quite a bit of money. I'm probably, how much we pay for HVAC. I know that's always a big surprise to hear what the HVAC costs. It'd be something similar for a school. So I know it's something that we would maybe like in the future, but everything like
I see.
costs money.
Okay. Okay, thank you, appreciate. Sorry, I just,
No, you're
this is
fine.
not really, but thank you, appreciate it.
I
That's
don't know,
it.
maybe we could use, if you have any additional funds at some point, maybe we can, I'm joking.
Yeah, not sure.
$55,000 is the number.
Is downloadable from the American Water Company as well. And they do, like, my dad used to work for the water company, not here in West Lafayette, but they would test daily and they were required to. But I live in the middle of nowhere and my water is horrible because it's sulfurated and it's from a well. So I understand it can be off-putting, but.
Our maintenance directors, they have some report or something. I remember I read that, but I just hear so many people complain that I just trying to figure out, understand better with that. Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Courtney.
Do you have another question?
Oh,
So much for the very informative presentation. I learned a lot. I really appreciate. And also, I appreciate that you collect feedback from students and the families regarding their, what they like, what they want to improve. And so maybe I missed it, but it sounds like kids, which is consistent with what I heard from the families, and kids in junior high and high like food more than the elementary school kids. And I wonder whether the difference is kind of required by some law or something, and the older kids have more options than the younger ones.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the timing. Since the junior, senior high kids get a lot more time to eat, we can give them more options and they can customize things. At the elementary and the intermediate, we got to get them in and out quite a bit quicker. And so they just don't have as many options because of that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so it's a schedule issue.
Yeah, sure.
I would say, since Courtney has worked her magic in our kitchen, the number of students buying a school lunch and actually eating the full tray of food has gone up tremendously. Because when our kids come in the cafeteria, they split off. The kids who are buying school lunch, the line is packed, and they're so excited. What are you going to get today? What are you going to get today? And then, there's just a handful of kids that go sit down with their lunch from home. So I would say, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's the parents who they don't even ever see food. So I think you've got a really great plan of like making it more visible what they're eating. Because to look at it, like, oh, I may go buy that today. It's pretty good. So I think I don't know that it's the kids saying they don't like it, because I will tell you, come cruise through and watch these kids scarf down their walking tacos. But I really think it is just a perception, because definitely not what we have as a school lunch. So.
That's good. I eat it every day.
I'll tell you, I will eat every time I'm in.
Yeah, you should.
well, maybe that's the answer, is to invite the community in and say, come have lunch at school. And
Okay, so that is a very expensive background check situation.
oh, but maybe before school starts. But you're right. I hadn't thought of that. They have to pay the adult.
Okay.
We'll do a drive-through.
How much can
Now, I will say, like, the percent that are buying, so typically in a district that has higher free and reduced, you will have more meals that are taken because it's free and reduced. For our low free and reduced rate, we do have really good sales. So, yeah.
We have great food. I told you
participation.
that since the day I came. I think you're amazing.
I think it's good, but sometimes I think the people who may not love the day's option, still, it's such a convenience that I think a lot of kids and families have gone to it. It really is easier.
It's way cheaper than buying it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Well, since
Yeah.
you're on, go ahead
Yeah.
and give us the contract presentation.
So thank you, Courtney. You always do such a good job. I will tell you that, she's always trying to improve things. She's always willing to talk to me about things we want to try, different things like that. So I really appreciate Courtney, her knowledge and what she does. So it's a pleasure working with her. So as she mentioned, we work with the K-12 Leading Indiana Cooperative to do our food service bids. The cooperative does all the work advertising for and collecting bids on behalf of the member schools. The recommendations for the different categories of mainline distributor, fresh produce, dairy, snacks and beverages, frozen novelties, branded pizza, and K-12 sanitation are included in the memo in your board packets. And just to explain a little bit, if you spend over a certain amount on something, that's when you have to do bids or get quotes. And so that's why we have to do this. We can't just go buy a bunch of things from like Sam's Club or something like that, because if we buy in so much quantity, we have to get bids. Okay. So bids are able to be renewed for up to 4 additional years beyond the initial award. Please approve those food service bids as submitted so that we can make sure we buy our food for this next school year.
Sounds like a good idea. Can I get a motion? Moved by Rachel, seconded by Lawrence. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor of feeding the kids, please raise your hand. That's everybody, Mrs. Julie. Thank you very much. All right, and back to you, Michelle, for the WEVAC agreement.
All right. So we spoke about the recent State Board of Accounts audit not too long ago, about what the different findings were. So due to one of the findings, we felt that it was important to outline expectations for the Wabash Valley Education Center and the operating agreement we have with them going forward to ensure that proper internal controls are in place. The WEVAC board approved the agreement last Friday, and it's now ready for your approval. You will notice that I did put in there that it will be at a charge of $15,000 that they will need to pay the school district, as the internal controls and oversight is going to be quite a bit greater than what it has been previously. And so I believe we increased that, and that money will come to the school corporation. It will go into the operations fund. So
Motion, please. Moved by Lawrence, seconded by Brad. Any comments? Rachel?
Thank you for pinning this down a little bit more thoroughly. I know that it's been a concern of yours pretty much from day one. What is this able to be accommodated by the existing staff?
yes, it will be Janelle and I that have basically already been doing a lot of this stuff anyhow, that we will both be doing it. And then we are in the process of training their new business person to hopefully eventually she will pick up all of those things and it'll wane a little bit. But I just feel like it's important. It's basically anything that they do is ours, that I put the same level of oversight on it that I would do with our stuff as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Daisha?
Have they paid us anything in the past, or is
Yes, they've paid $5,000 a year in the
a
past.
year in the past? So helpful.
And that was basically for the use of the accounting software.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm very impressed with what you've done, and I know it's a lot of extra work on you, so thank you for.
It makes me feel a little bit better having all that in writing though, so yeah.
No, thank you for putting it all together.
Lawrence?
They already answered my question, but another question. So basically, this 15,000 is kind of normal practice, right? When we do-
They're all kind of different across the state. Some are with LEAs. Everyone is different. I'll just say that. Some are off on their own, some are with the school corporation. I think it is standard practice that if a school corporation is over or is the LEA or the financial liaison, that there is something charged for the use of time and materials. And this was just a number that we agreed upon.
Okay. So from 5,000 to 15,000. So in terms of our workload, do we have a lot of extra workloads after the workload, our workload?
You have a higher work.
I'll have a little bit more, yes, because I'm now meeting with their business person to review everything before the board meeting. So I will review all of their invoices, make sure their account numbers are correct. I'm going to be reviewing everything that goes through for grants to make sure that everything is correct with grants. They're supposed to be monitoring their grants. I'm going to monitor them monitoring their grants. So yes, there will be a little bit more of a workload.
But this is per her choice, because we want to cross-check and make sure that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, of auditing.
So next year, you won't be, next 2
Next
years later,
audit,
you won't show
hopefully it
up
doesn't,
on
yeah.
anything, on the auditing
Yeah.
things. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, appreciate it.
All those in favor of the WEBAC agreement, please raise your hand. That's everybody one more time. And back to Michelle one more time for the finance update.
An object breakdown is included in your board packets for expenses during the period of May 4th through June 4th. I've included 2 fund reports again for you this month. The first is the month-end final report for April after all revenue and expenses have been posted and the bank has been reconciled. School Corporation ended the month of April with $18,609,005.72 in all funds and $5,146,188 in the education fund. I've also included the preliminary fund report for May as normal, but we're still in the process of posting revenue and reconciling that month. And then as far as the office, IASBO, the Indiana Association of School Business Officials, is wrapping up its professional development calendar for the year. I've had a chance to teach a few of those courses over the past couple of months and interact with colleagues across the state, so that's been a good time. We're gearing up for our busy season in the business office with fiscal year and reports, and we will also be working on the 2025 budget during the summer. So when people ask us, are you going to enjoy your summer off? No, we are not off. We are actually the busiest during the summer of pretty much any other time during the year. So,
Okay, thank you very much. And it's your turn. Info to the board. Yep.
So just a quick update on staffing. I talked a little bit about this in Friday notes, but as you're aware, Mrs. Johnson, you've approved that she be assistant principal at the high school. Congratulations to Mrs. Johnson. I can tell you she's very excited about this opportunity. We will be posting the director of special education position this week. It will be a full-time position focusing fully on K through 12 special education services. Really working on that K through 12 consistency. This also allows us not to replace the coordinator position at the elementary for special education services. We will instead hire a behavior intervention teacher, which was identified as a need, and that came out of the class size reduction study committee that Mrs. Roth did a great job facilitating and taking us through over last year. And so that special education teacher will have a special education license. That teacher will work with students with and without IEPs, and that teacher will also support general education teachers. We're recommending also hiring an additional RBT, or registered behavior technician. Currently, we have one RBT that serves the elementary and intermediate split, and we want to ensure that we have one designated for each building, the elementary and the intermediate. And then finally, you're aware that we will continue the mental health counselor position for another year. And this position will be incorporated into our budget, the education fund. And that's my report.
Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I look at that, I just hear what you report. Basically, so the director of special education will be full-timely concentrate on the special education. And we will have a new behavior intervention teacher, right? Correct. It's kind of new thing. And also we will have a RBT, registered behavior technician. That's a kind of new hire, right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we also will have a so-called board certified behavior analyst.
That will be increased because they oversee the
Included
RBT. So yeah, so there will be an increase in hours there. Correct.
Yeah, I really appreciate those things. I think that will be a very good because one of our school priorities support students at risk and special need also. So I think that's great. But my question is, these things will increase the expense. So in terms of financial impact, how much we can handle. I think we can handle that, but how much you think will be actual cost for?
So I'll let Mrs. Crock speak a little to that because we work closely on that. Some of it's a wash. The director, for example, moving that to a full-time position, and then moving, so there's not an addition because there are two assistant principals as opposed to now 2.1 third. Two and a third.
Yeah, I got you.
And then we're not replacing the coordinator at the elementary level, so that becomes a wash with the teacher. And so we're really, what we're adding is, thank you, the
Behavior.
RBT, the RBT, yes. That is the addition.
We have so many acronyms in public education.
That's what I'm looking at my notes as I say it.
Okay, Rachel?
I am curious in this report about what additional supports will be available at the intermediate school with that new classroom moving, or that classroom moving from the elementary to the intermediate school building. I'm certain that the leadership in that school will need some additional supports. Will they have that? What will that look like for them?
So they'll have a full-time RBT in that building, and then if the special education teacher, behavior teacher, will focus primarily on the elementary, but for teacher support, that's a possibility too.
So they won't have an additional administrator in any way?
There will not be an
over the
additional
program
administrator.
in that.
That's
So
correct.
Mrs. Saros will be responsible for that?
So
If-
ask that question differently, if you would, please.
Yeah. With that classroom, there have been a history of challenges and unique opportunities for education. And so my question is that I know Mrs. Delaney has been very involved in. Mrs. Saros is getting a brand new apple dropped in her basket. What will be her support to be successful with that?
Her support would be similar to what the support was of Mrs. Delaney. The special education director will work directly with her.
Okay, so they'll come from the high school building, the junior, senior high building, and work with her directly on those situations?
The special education director will not be considered at the junior, senior high. It will be K through 12 director.
Right, but they'll be presumably housed at the high school, or?
Probably not.
Probably not, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Put them on one of the little buses. Scooter. Okay, anybody else? All right, as far as my legislative report goes, I shared our concerns, which Herr Stute outlined very well, about the GPS diploma plan by phone with Representative Chris Campbell. And she suggested that Dr. Greiner and the administrative team and I meet with Dr. Jenner, the state superintendent of education, which we did via Zoom. And I had a couple of misconceptions that were cleared up, but I think we were very clear in our concerns and made sure that everyone was aware. So I encourage everybody to give their feedback as well via the website, which is indianagps.doe.in.gov. And then I attended the ISBA law seminar with Lawrence last week, and Michelle and I are headed to the budget seminar on Wednesday. So I'm spending a lot of time in Indianapolis, learning all the things and talking with people that I actually recognize now, which is kind of nice after 4 years. So how about you, Brad? What's going on with the redevelopment folks?
The last meeting we had was the 15th of May. Actually, Dr. Greiner was there along with me. This is the survey by APA and Associates. The bottom line was the unmet need that they revealed was between 75 and 125 slots, which I countered and thought that was low. If you go back in time, there was a presentation made May 22nd, 2023 by Right Steps to the Greater Lafayette Commerce. The unmet need was defined as 3,500 countywide. So if we would extrapolate the population of West Lafayette and convert that, the unmet need in our little area is closer to 800. So we differed on that. The other thing they did is they evaluated optional sites, and based upon their survey, they believe that the best strategic site is closer to Cowbell Road. okay, based on the population where it is and where it's going. I also believe that there's probably room for 2 facilities in West Lafayette, not just one. The survey didn't state that, but anecdotally, I think there's probably room. So let's keep an eye on this. I don't think we walk away and say this is the doctrine that will guide us, but there's obviously a need for pre-K education in our community, and we're going to embark on that ourselves. But it'll be interesting to see what develops over time, because I think that our community needs to create, it's necessary. We have to compete for people that are moving to our community. The new plant that's coming is going to have 1,000 employees. The multiple is 4x, so that's 4,000 new workers in our county. We're going to have to respond to this, and we're going to have to be competitive. And so these are things that we need to address going forward. So again, the takeaway, we had a survey, but I'm not sure that's the whole story.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Rachel's got a question.
Yeah, Brent, did you get the sense that the best time to approach this is in the strategic planning process, or do you think there's another, do you think we need to try and move forward with that outside of that process?
No, I would say, Rachel, when we gather our larger community, I think it'll probably rise to the surface, and I'm thinking it might become a priority. At least I hope it would. So I think that if we have a unified front and an organized strategy, if you will, I think that's got to be taken seriously. So that's kind of what I would think.
Yui, go ahead. Thank you.
Because the class won't meet until next semester.
Okay. Rachel.
Board teacher discussion met on May the 16th. I was not able to be there.
I was there.
I have the picture up of your fantastic notes.
I
Do you
did have notes. Go ahead. I don't.
I thought I would have it ready in case you did not.
Thank you.
So yeah, as per usual, if you can't go, call your board chair. The
She'll
August,
forget all about it.
no, your August open house plans are set. They had a discussion about that, and it looks like they, as always, have been very conscientious about making sure that families can attend both if they have building in multiple levels, which I always appreciate that they do that. They talked about anticipated class sizes. Kindergarten's filled. Third grade is, it looks like for teachers, third grade is open positions.
Yes, for teachers.
Fourth grade has 1 and 3 maternity leaves. Fifth grade does still have 25 kids in a couple of sessions, so they're continuing to watch that. And then non-certified positions, they're saying there's not really enough anywhere. In particular, they're looking for custodial and lunch dietary staff, culinary staff, call it that. And then looks like with regard to the cell phone policy, which I know we've all been kind of watching, there will be no change at the intermediate or elementary school. Looks like the high school is still in development. And the next meeting looks like will be August the 5th.
Bless your heart, reading my loopy handwriting. Thank you.
Can I make a comment about
Yeah.
this? Only because of the topic. I want to applaud the principals for the great interview process and the teachers that they're bringing in. Mrs. Roth and I have met with each of those teachers, and I get chills thinking about it. We got some excited teachers coming in, and I think that you'll be excited and impressed when you meet some of the individuals that are coming in. So thank you to our principals.
There are great teachers starting all over the state this fall.
Yes, there are.
All right, Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, myself, just last week I joined ISPA, the law seminars, and there's a lot of update on the new regulations and their implications of our public education. So that's very helpful. One thing worth to mention is I heard the ISBA and also the superintendent associations, I think they work together trying to update their association evaluation, the questionnaire. So right now we have 50 questions. My understanding is they are trying to reduce that fewer questions. And I talked to Lisa, and she said because the regulations change, so they are going to update that questionnaires for the superintendent evaluation. And I share with her is she's working on that. So I share with her that's because some questions regarding the superintendent and the employees. I mean, I told them as a board member, I don't know anything of that information, and it's very hard for us to do some evaluations, and that's not fair for our superintendent. And she said, oh, they will consider that. But I just say some questions may be a little bit old and not relevant, or maybe we don't have information to do the fair evaluation for our superintendent. So, and she said it's okay, she will think about it. So that's something. And regarding the park, I think the park board approved a designing group. So for help them to develop a master plan for Celery Bog Natural Area and the Lily Natural Center. So I think they find contractors doing that. And the municipal pool open Memorial Day, not Memorial Weekend, I think it's May 27th. And also next meeting will be next Monday, but I won't be joining their in person, so I will join remotely. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks. And Deja?
Yes, the Public Schools Foundation has 4 West Lafayette community members who serves on the board. Currently, we have Bo Scott, Brady Kolb, and Melissa Prochnow. Amisha Shaw has been serving on the board and just stepped down. So they just appointed Zach Antelis. So
great.
We've had great community members that just give a lot. The Cupcake Run, which is the big fundraiser, will be September 22nd. And the fall teacher grant cycle will begin August 1st. So they'll get that sent out to the teachers. And it'll be open till the middle of September. I also had 2 questions. We continue to hear from parents about the difficulty of the current schedule with the release and start time at the intermediate school and elementary school. And so my question is, has Doug yet put together a plan, or could he put together a plan that would tell us how many more buses and bus drivers we would need to give a more balanced schedule for our parents?
We would need 11 more buses.
11 more buses?
11 more drivers and buses.
And each bus is like 200,000? 180,000.
Well, then it creates a new challenge because of our square miles, it would eliminate again our drivers down. And so now we're.
They wouldn't be full-time bus drivers anymore.
And so then, of course, they're going to want to go to neighboring districts. So.
And it would more than double our maintenance costs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, he has looked at that.
So I guess maybe this is a strategic plan. I feel like parents are sharing concerns and we're saying, too bad, deal with it. But it's a pretty serious concern that they keep bringing forward. And so I have appreciated when you've allowed study groups or different options to see what could we do to look outside of the box, or what other options could we consider. But maybe we want to wait until after the strategic plan to see if something comes from, anyways. I just have felt bad with the way that parents are struggling, and I feel like that more conversations would help them feel more heard and, see, are we missing something? What options do we have besides just putting such a huge burden on several of our families? So
It is difficult. I had kids at all 3 schools for a year, and I felt like I literally drove in circles all day long. It is a challenge, and I feel for those parents myself. I know it's difficult, but without spending, God, what would that be? $2 million? I'm doing too much math tonight. More than that.
Buses are about $200,000 each. We need 10 or 11 of them.
Yeah, it'd be a huge outlay and
then the driver expense.
a very significant percentage of the budget. So I just want to say out loud that it is not that anybody doesn't care, that it's difficult or doesn't understand the challenges. It's a very real economic problem. And I would encourage anyone as the legislative person who doesn't like all the economic problems we have to talk to their state representatives and senators. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's no way to for the bus schedule, there's no way to change. Assuming that's okay. So I wonder, alternatively, can we, for the elementary school, is it possible at all for us to figure out more after-school educational programs in the not necessarily provided by the school, maybe collaborate with some external providers like Purdue, some departments they may have students or some people who can help out to provide more educational programs after school. That way, those younger kids can stay in school for a longer time.
The problem is I don't know that it would be after school care. It would be enrichment opportunities. And we have expanded opportunities by partnering with the Parks and Rec. And actually, Mrs. Cronk and I continue to meet. We meet with Kevin No 2 or 3 times a year. And so we've actually expanded our after school care.
Right.
So there are expanded opportunities. It just may not be what parents want. And so then parents need to decide, do they want to take advantage of the after school opportunities for care, or do they choose to go somewhere else since they have obviously choice on where they would get their after school services? But to say that enrichment is an after school care option, it really isn't, because it wouldn't necessarily be a dependable, consistent service. So I would tell you, I would suggest that I would guess, and if I'm wrong, you can correct me, if there are opportunities to offer enrichment programs partnering with Purdue, I bet you would be open to what opportunities are there that are affordable, if not free, but it wouldn't necessarily be an after-school care program, because it would be an enrichment opportunity that individuals would offer at a certain time in the building.
From what I'm seeing in parents, it's before school. That's the problem. Work starts at 8. They can't drop their kids off till 8:45. And then the intermediate, they're done so early, theirs is more after school. So it's.
Yeah, and we do continue to talk with Kevin. We're talking about ideas in the future. And we want to have more dialogue, and then we'll have dialogue with the principals. So there may be other opportunities there. I just don't know if it's what every parent wants, but it would be an opportunity to offer additional after-school care and before-school care.
Right. So, but are we, in general, are we open to, let's say, letting some external providers to use our classrooms to offer
Not the classrooms,
educational,
because those are instructional areas where teachers need to have access to their classrooms. So as an elementary teacher, I can assure you, I would have gone ballistic if I had to exit my classroom at a certain, because I was focused on kids and learning. That was #1 priority for me. And you've heard about our great teachers. You've heard compliments from principals when Mr. Schreiner was speaking. Our teachers, they're dedicated and focused, and they need their classrooms. So I don't think we would offer classrooms. Is that accurate?
Okay, great. So that's clarified. Then for the common area, like a cafeteria or gym, those areas, is it possible? I know, safe harbor, but they only use one, I assume. So, but we have like.
They have spaces available too.
So basically, it's not an option. Besides the safe harbor, we won't be able to let external provider to offer any educational enrichment programs after school.
I think it would depend on the building. Like, someone could rent out our larger instruction room. They could not rent out our multi-purpose room, because that's where we use it for teacher meetings. There wouldn't be something consistent. So it would be like a building use agreement where they could come in and rent a space. But it wouldn't be like the gym or the cafeteria, but there would be a space similar to this that they could rent out.
Okay, so
and again, we are looking at even partnering further with the Parks Department. Yeah, we're continuing. So we're continuing to look at opportunities for increasing partnerships from where we are today. And I'm not. We wouldn't do anything without working with you. I'm just saying that Kevin has mentioned he's very interested in continuing to expand opportunities for partnerships. And I have a feeling, Lawrence, you hear the same thing from Dr. Purpura, that there is interest in continuing to develop that partnership.
Okay, yes, we have the partnership with the park, with the kids a bus to their recreation center, right? So but still sounds like it's still possible that we can rent out some of the unused room after school to some external providers if there's a right one, and that parents will allow to send their kids to.
It would all depend on who's out there, and if they can provide something consistent. I mean, it would have to be a Monday through Friday program for it to be helpful.
And when you speak of partnering with Purdue, the problem I ran into when my kids were small, we had a slew of different babysitters from Purdue, but they were only there for 16 weeks. And our school went longer, you know, the semesters match up as closely as we can, but they're not identical. And so you had weeks at the beginning and weeks at the end when your childcare went home, and it was very difficult. So, you know, I appreciate your willingness to brainstorm on this, but I don't know that this is the right moment. Maybe we can talk in between a meeting and see if we can brainstorm some ideas. Okay. Rachel?
I just want to point out, in the past 6 months, I've heard from one parent who has concerns and difficulties. And I think this is an important juncture to mention the many, many parents who have made difficult decisions in dealing with this situation. They've elected to have one parent stay home or work from home. They've made arrangements with their neighbors to carpool and share the burden. They've had to make compromises and sacrifices, which comes from being the parent, working parent of school-age children. And so I have heard from many of those parents who, while finding it very difficult, have also found a way to make it work, just as I did when my children were young. So I do think it's important to keep some balance and perspective, and that's the nature of my comment tonight.
Thank you. Anybody else?
One more question. I am not clear on the school board calendar. It says we have a meeting on the 8th, but then you've said something about it's being canceled or you're changing it. I've never gotten accurate information on July's plans.
Well, usually we cancel the July meeting and allow everyone to have a break. And that was my preference for this year. And prior to when we switched to the second Monday of the month, we always had a meeting before school started in August. It would have been on the 5th this year, and then school officially starts on the 7th, and we would have had time to approve the hires officially. You had an objection to allowing Dr. Greiner to have the emergency hire option that has been traditional. So he doesn't have that option. My solution, which I came up with in concert with the administrative staff, was to have a very brief meeting on the 15th in order to officially approve those hires so that they would feel comfortable leaving their previous position officially and coming in 3 weeks later in August. And I thought that was a rather elegant solution. And I even thought about maybe having a cookout or something social among us afterward. I didn't get a lot of feedback about that. So on the agenda, you'll see that our next official meeting is August the 12th, which again is after school starts. So we'll need to figure out some solution for those families. But typically, it has not been the second week of July, and that wouldn't capture all of the new hires the way having one later in July, but not after school starts would. Does that make sense?
So I guess I have two questions. Is the first one, I have felt like, and I don't know the procedures, is I have felt like when the school board calendar has to be changed, it was like voted on or people were made aware of it.
It says
I've
if
never been-
needed
It says as needed. Okay. I
The
missed
July meeting has always said if needed.
that. Oh, okay. Then that's my bad. I missed that. So then my second question is the 15th, why not the 22nd or the 29th, just to help me understand?
There was a conflict on one of those dates. I can't remember what it was, but we spoke on the phone, and the date that was late enough but not too late that we came up with was the 15th. I can't remember either.
The reality is that teachers,
Mrs. Julian is on vacation, and she is critical to
the reality is that teachers who are actively working under contract in their school corporation are going to need time in order to do that. And so I would not feel comfortable pushing it to the very end of July, or to, it seems too late for them to make a good transition, and for their school that they're currently employed with to find replacements.
And we did look at the 15th and the 22nd, and it was, the reason for the 15th was because of, if we could do it with Mrs. Julian present, 1, 2, it gave more time, and 3, beyond the 22nd, we did feel like it was pushing it, so.
We have 2 positions open, plus at the intermediate, we have 2 at the junior, senior, and how many at the elementary or intermediate?
I don't remember off the top of my head. There are several.
High school, we're looking at high school 1. Wait, we don't have any at elementary. 1 still. That's right. Yep. Yep. So 3 there, 1 there, and then our special ed director.
So is everyone amenable? Could we take a vote on meeting on the 15th of July as long as we're all here?
So we'll have to see. I mean, I actually planned my travels because I didn't know you were canceling the 8th and the 15th, but I could, if we could do a Zoom possibly, and maybe able to adjust it. I think that the circumstances, I agree. I don't think we want to make our teachers waiting. So whatever administration needs to do, like I said, I wish this decision had been shared previously, but the circumstances we're in, I'm fine with setting whatever is best for administration.
Would you also need to be by Zoom, Yui? You were shaking your head. You'll be here. Lawrence, Rachel, Brad, you'll all be. Okay, so are we allowed to vote on personnel by Zoom? Or,
I think they can. Yeah, yes.
okay, yeah, we
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily need you by Zoom because, you know, we can function with 6, but if you chose to, that would work. So, all right, in that case, let's plan on meeting briefly, like 15 minutes on the 15th to approve those hires. And then our next meeting will be on August the 12th, and we will have a work session ahead of time at 5 so that we can all remind each other which policies we're talking about. And, I'm sorry?
What time for the 15th? I can put on my calendar.
5 o'clock on the
5 o'clock,
15th,
okay.
yep. On 7:15, and we'll, like, real quick, and I was gonna check into the cost of a cookout.
It'll be July 15th, right? July 15th.
Yes. Okay, and therefore I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So me?
Moved by Lawrence, seconded by Brad, all in favor. That's